All right, guys, welcome to the stream. Today it's all about the character art for video game pipeline. I should probably mention that it's the AAA character art for video game pipeline because that's pretty much where I have worked my whole career there. And pretty much everything I will present to you guys is kind of colored in that direction there. We will talk a little bit about what are the differences, certainly in terms of time, when it comes to perhaps creating characters when you're not in a AAA situation there. We'll talk a little bit about that. But my own training specifically is in AAA character art there. So that will be certainly the bigger thing we'll talk about there. But I think this is interesting because there's a lot of people who really wonder like how does character art happen on video game productions, especially in AAA productions, these sorts of things. Is it just one person making a whole character from scratch, or is there like multiple people involved there? There's like a lot of little subtleties there that are interesting to talk about, specifically when it comes to AAA there, because I think a lot of you guys, that's kind of where you want to go usually. That's kind of where you want to break in there. So I think it's going to be interesting to really filter the discussion through that lens. But yeah, we will talk a little bit about the differences there between perhaps more indie development when it makes sense to do so there. So today it's all a theoretical class. It's not a practical class. We will certainly look at 3D, look at things in there, but we won't actually show how to model stuff, essentially, since this is really the first class that we have on the topic of the actual pipeline itself for full characters there. So for me, it's important today to do a bit of an overview of the content itself, without getting too bogged down into the all these individual rabbit holes that are all the different steps of the pipeline there. So today it's really an overview. It's really to prepare you guys for pretty much all the content that we have planned over the next few weeks as far as this whole topic is concerned. I will go ahead here and just show you guys what the outline is today, and then we will talk also about what is new at Outgang this week right after the fact there. So this is the outline for today. This is pretty much what we have planned. As I said, it's all pretty much a theoretical class for the most part, although we will spend some time in 3D software, of course, and we will look at stuff there. So we will start, of course, with our What's New segment. So what is new at the studio this week? And afterward, we will do a bit of a show and tell. We'll look at a lot of different characters left and right from AAA productions, notably from Deus Ex, from Horizon, from Uncharted 4 and other things there. We'll look at a lot of the characters that have been produced in a AAA setting there, and we'll talk really about what the character art job really is, how many people are involved in creating characters, these sorts of things. So I want to start with a bit of a show and tell to really just ease ourselves into this particular topic there. And we'll see what's going to come out of that. I think we'll probably already start dispelling a lot of misconceptions as it comes to what is the role of someone who does character art, and how many people just what is the role of someone on a production there, especially a AAA production. So we'll talk more about that. We'll talk about all those different roles that are involved in creating characters there. And then we'll present the whole pipeline. So pretty much everything from A to Z, from the moment that it leaves the hands of the people doing the concepts and all the way to the integration within a video game engine there. We'll talk about the whole pipeline. We'll do a bit of an overview of pretty much all the steps involved. I'm sure a lot of those are steps that you may already be aware, but if you are watching this, it means that you are probably also very interested in seeing in greater detail what a pipeline actually looks like. And there may be a few steps in there that you haven't really thought were actual steps in the pipeline there. So I think that's going to be interesting to talk about that. Now, of course, when we are talking about video game production and AAA video game production, one thing that is very that is noticeable to us very quickly is that pretty much every studio works in their own way, So what I'll be presenting to you guys is just my own general take on what the pipeline is, but of course that changes quite a lot from studio to studio there. So we'll draw as many generalities as we can, but you'll see also that at some point the generalities are just that, they're just a starting point to each studio doing their own thing, really. And so it's going to be quite interesting to talk about how different studios approaches different things. Then we'll take a break. And after the break, we'll do more of a deep dive on each of those little steps involved in the process there, and we'll really just break them down a bit more, just to kind of understand a little bit what are the different things that are important there. What is the development of a character from like A to Z? How do we go about doing that? So we'll present really the whole pipeline in greater detail after the break, and that will lead us to our Q&A there. I'm not sure that these times will necessarily be the times at which we'll actually take the break and take the Q&A there. So every week that kind of changes a little bit, because the content always kind of changes in length a little bit there. So these are suggestions more than anything else. I suspect today is not going to be a longer one of the longer classes that we have. It just depends how much time we spend really talking about the details there of each of the steps of the pipeline there. But we'll take the Q&A after we've been doing this for at least 2 hours, at least, perhaps 3. We'll see how it's going to go. But of course, these timestamps are just there as a suggestion, really. All right, guys, let's talk about character art for video games there. But before we do that, I wanted to do something with you guys. Let's see how many people there is if we have broken a record after all. After also, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, we're at like 16, I think. So there's actually less people this week than there were last week. But once we talk about Unreal, I guess that's kind of expected there. Before we actually properly talk about the character art for video game pipeline, I wanted to take an occasion to watch the Horizon 2 trailer with you guys, and maybe kind of break that down. Actually, let me switch back here. So I wanted to take an occasion to watch the Horizon 2 trailer with you guys. I've watched it once so far, and I wanted to watch it again. So I watched it once, and I kind of had to stop myself from watching it again because I wanted to watch it with you guys, and I wanted to more or less preserve my own reactions to things there. I've seen some extremely impressive character art, so we won't in any way talk about anything that is a secret as far as the game is concerned. So I will mostly approach this from the perspective of someone who's a fan of the franchise there. But because I have training in character art, of course, I certainly have a unique perspective there to share. And so I will have to be very guarded with what I say so that I don't reveal any sort of secrets there. I can only talk about what we can see on screen. But, I think I'm in a very unique position as well to kind of talk about it there. So if people from Sony are watching this, you can rest assured that I am not breaking any sort of non-disclosure agreements I have signed there. This is all essentially from the perspective of what is publicly available from like everyone and simply observing things. But I want to point out some things, right? Because there's like already some things I was like, oh, they have improved this as far as Aloy is concerned. And I just want to point out what I can see because I'm really excited about this. The team at Guerrilla Games has done a fantastic job with the trailer there. So first of all, I mean, we do owe them a round of applause for such a job well done there. But ultimately, let's just look at this and see where this kind of takes us as a conversation. I also want to hear what you guys have to say, okay? Like we'll watch the trailer, we'll pause at different moments. I want to hear what you guys also have to say as far as the trailer is concerned and what you guys can spot. Because we don't often have a chance to do that, just to break down like great character art as people who are experts in the particular field there. So I think we can bring a very interesting, unique twist to this particular conversation here. Let me go ahead here and pull up the trailer itself. So this is a Horizon Forbidden West. All right, so let's watch this together. So I'll pause a moment. There's something that's kind of interesting to talk about, and I invite you guys to also comment at the same time. I don't want to be the only one that's going to talk because that's going to be very boring, I think. Since truth be told, I may not have that much to say, haha, if I'm the only one talking, because I obviously cannot reveal anything that hasn't been shown. But let's watch this together there. I'm not sure whether you guys can hear the sound there, so I'll have to kill the sound just in case, so that we don't drown out each other there. And if ever this makes its way to YouTube, I also don't want to get a copyright infringement thing, if that is even possible, this kind of thing. Yeah, let's watch this together and let's simply pause when there's something interesting. Keep your microphones open, guys. If you guys want to talk about it, I want to hear what you guys have to say on this as well. How long is the whole trailer, by the way? Ooh, 19 minutes. It's probably too long. Let's fast forward a little bit. I don't think we'll watch 19 minutes of this. I'm really especially interested in the characters there and just starting to point some things out, right? Like, first of all, the thing that really... Did you guys see this? It's like they like opened the trailer with like a shot of like Aloy's face, you know? And like, there's no denying that this face has been improved since Horizon 1, right? Just like, it's really such a beautiful face, and like, look at like all this little subtleties that's in there, you know? There's like a little bit of like, we can really feel like the compression of the different muscles of the forehead there, you know, and there's some really complex kind of expression that's kind of going on there, you know? So I'm really not surprised that it's like the first thing that she sees, like Aloy's face, you know? It's like, you know, because I mean, of course, they would have worked on that, and they would have to try to, like, you know, at the very least try to just up-res the whole data, but probably even beyond that, you know? So it's like, hey guys, look at the great work that we have done here. And, you know, they've pretty much always been known for the quality of their work, right? But like, one thing too that kind of strikes me is like, you know, this is a PS5 game now, so like everything is like much sharper in terms of like textures and stuff. That's really, really noticeable, especially if you watch this on like 4K. I love the shadows here. I'm not sure what's kind of going on. Ooh, there's a few issues here with hair, but you know, ultimately this is video games, right? So there's always a limit to what you can kind of accomplish. Crash through issues will always be something that we have to deal with in video games. But you know, most people don't really care too much about that.
There's something, hey Laura, the airy intersection with the shoulder. It's when I saw that, it's for me, it's very noticeable. I know it's because of the dynamics, but on the left shoulder, the hair it's intersecting and clipping with the shoulder or something. But
yeah, it does look more like really it does look like it's kind of clipping maybe a bit too much than what we would expect there, you know. But that's something that's like so hard to fix, right? It's like if you wanted to get rid of these kind of problems entirely, then like the hair would kind of have to go like perhaps even like all the way over like the fur that's there and stuff, you know, like that would be like, and you'd start to have some really weird stuff happening with the hair in terms of like shape of it and stuff. Like,
to be fair, I'd rather have that than a render trailer, right? Because that way you can see like how it actually would work in the game.
I agree with that. Yeah, I thought that thing too. Like when I watched the trailer, I was like, this is surprisingly realistic in the sense that like it feels like a video game, right? It's like, and I mean that in a good way, you know. Like I mean that in you know, in the best possible way that I can mean that. It feels like we're watching a video game as opposed to like a pre-rendered trailer of some kind, which, you know, it is pre-rendered, or I mean, it's probably live on the. It's probably real time, but ultimately, like it doesn't feel like they've cheated too many things, if they have cheated things at all in here, you know. And that's really, really cool. So my compliments to them for that. But yeah, you know, like I remember Horizon 1, it's like they had some great faces on there too, right? There were some really, really beautiful faces in there. And here we can see that they're clearly putting that forward as well. It's like they've really put a lot of effort in this. It's like the quality of the facial animation of like Aloy seems to have increased so much, you know, like versus Horizon 1. And that's really cool, you know. It's like Guerrilla Games has like always been known for like really pushing like the quality of like video games, you know, like, or like the quality of the graphics, you know, like even like in the times of like Killzone 2 and stuff, right? It's like they were already known back then to be like really, really awesome when it comes to like video game graphics. And you can see here that I don't think that they've really stopped that. You know, there's one thing that I kind of want to point out right away about Aloy's hair. Like, I remember watching the trailer first. The first time I watched this trailer here, so this is essentially the second time. The first time I watched the trailer, there was something about her hair. Like, she looks like she's got darker hair than she had before. Have you guys noticed that, by the way? Now, yes, I worked on this, but I don't actually know if anything changed there. I have no information as far as that's concerned. But it's just...
Did they reuse the...
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, did they reuse the previous hair from Joan Litleval, I think? That was the artist.
It looks like the same hair, right? It looks like the same hair.
I don't know, I'm just asking.
I don't know either, actually. I mean, her haircut hasn't really changed. I'm sure they've made improvements. I mean, like, you kind of have to, right? At the very least, it's like the textures look a lot sharper and look a lot better there. But like, yeah, like for me, the thing about the hair color is that it's kind of interesting that like her hair looks like it's a bit darker, and I kind of wanted to do a bit of a comparison and try to figure out why that was. Like, have they like actually changed that, or like, let's look at Horizon 1 here. Horizon 1, Aloy.
But that's something that you can do, like, actually in the engine, no? Just switching a bit the color, and I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. I think the reason why her hair looks a bit darker in the trailer than it did in Horizon 1, I think the reason that explains that, I mean, I don't know if there's any creative decisions here that have been made by the team. I don't actually know. I left the team like over 2 years ago, so truth be told, you know, like what happened in the meantime there, things have probably changed quite a lot. So even if I knew something before, I don't know it now. But like, when I'm looking at this, like there is one thing. So this is Aloy from Horizon 1, right? And I think I know why her hair looks darker in Horizon 2. Her hair color may not have changed, but there's actually something about the shader for Horizon 1. If you guys take a look, right? It's like her hair, it looks a little bit metallic, actually. I think that's the reason. Like, there's these highlights, these kind of golden highlights that we can spot here.
That's what I noticed too, because like the game looks extremely colorful and it's very realistic, but there is the environments are so colorful that the characters like really feel a bit darker in some contexts.
Yeah. But for me, like critically, really, like when we're comparing these two shaders, like it's like as if her hair is kind of a bit metallic looking in Horizon 1. And like, I think, you know, because the hair does look quite dark. But when you add those metallic kind of highlights on top, it makes it look a lot brighter and a lot more yellowish, you know, like almost as if it's like metallic hair.
It's really glossy, very stylized look. Like a bit like Blizzard in the Forbidden West, I think.
Yeah, sure. So like the hair for me, like the thing about the hair is that it looks like the shading model probably has changed, probably has improved between the two games, right? And you know, like in a way I kind of always liked that her hair was a bit metallic, is like, or had a bit of that like sort of very yellow bright highlight, right? Because for me it kind of goes with her name too. It's like Aloy, you know, like you kind of think of like her name sounds like metal, of course, and like the hair, like this almost looks like what's that material there? I have cuivre en français, which is a material. What's that material in English again? Copper. Like it's like almost copper-ish, you know, which kind of goes well with her name, I feel like. So that's kind of interesting, you know, that there's that distinction there. So I don't know if there has been work as far as changing the hair color, if there's any sort of decisions that have been made there, but at the very least, like we can kind of spot that like the hair looks like it kind of lost that sort of golden sheen, it seems.
How much could the ambient be contributing to that color change, I wonder?
Well, if you have a metallic shader, like, or shader that has a bit of a metallic finish to it, right? Like it's always going to reflect light of a very specific color there. So I don't think it's related to the ambient per se. Because in both cases, she seems like she's in daylight, right? So I don't think the lighting there is necessarily what explains the difference. But you tweak shaders, you improve shaders, you do all of that work, and ultimately, I mean, if they felt like that's what gives a better hair, because like the hair does look quite good, the hair shader does look quite good. So, there's a bit of it here that we can still spot, a little bit of that golden shine seems to be there. So maybe it's not all gone. I love the jaw there. I love what's happening there. Like it's like a saw. They should totally be able to spot her. This game's not realistic. Wait, this is a video game?
How can this be a video game?
Crazy that you can see the peach fuzz.
I know, right? It's like you
That's
can see like all the
insane.
tiny peach fuzz. I know. Like it's so crazy. It's like it's so insane. And like look, like
And
you
all
can
of
see
the
like
wrinkles.
I know
Yeah,
it's
the
like
wrinkles. It's really nice.
there's like so much wrinkles there, right? Yeah.
Their eyes
Even
are more much alive than the first one.
They've really improved the whole data there. It's really, really cool.
even the face have lots of changes, like the skin itself means the previous shader is very stylized, and it's, I don't know, means it's have something simplified, but now it's way too much detailed.
It's way too what? Sorry, what did you say? It's way too real. Is that
It's
what you said?
way, yeah, it's way too real, and it's have so much, means we can see the skin pores stretching while she changing her expressions. I don't know, means the previous game had that.
But like, do you mean that as a critique, or do you mean that as like, oh, it's too real, like as an
Yeah,
excited comment?
it's
or?
too real. Yeah, it's a good, means in a good manner. Means it's,
Okay.
yeah, means
Okay. It's like, this game's too real. I'm used to this game being stylized. What are you doing? Bring this into like the realistic spectrum there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant about the environment and things, not in a bad way, but like in a good light. And then,
Yeah. I like that Horizon has always been about like an optimistic, like almost, like it's a post-apocalyptic world that they call, but at the same time, like it's very almost optimistic about its own future, and you can kind of deduce that from like how bright and how saturated all of the colors are, how lush all the environments are, like it's a franchise about something really bad that kind of happened to the world, but that for me like always kind of also conveyed a bit of a feeling of hope for the future,
I'm kind of curious though about her eyes. Like they almost look like there's a real refraction in there. How would someone go about doing that? That's like incredible.
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, eye shaders have been something that have been worked on like for a long time, right? Because like eye shaders are really important. So, and like eyes don't typically take a big part of the screen either, So you can actually afford to have like shaders for eyes that are actually very expensive because they take such a tiny part of the screen that it kind of you can usually put a lot of effort and have a lot of cool effects there, But like refraction for eyes, something that we have been we've kind of been faking for like since the PS4 days, So yeah, there probably really is refraction, but it's really nice how like the light, like you can see that this is the part of the iris that's lit, that's like brighter, but you can see the reflection spots on the cornea that are opposite to that. So, there's a nice kind of convex or rather concavity to the eyes and stuff, like it's really, really beautiful work.
the eyes have that reflection looks almost like an anime reflection that they normally do when they are drawn in anime.
It doesn't look like there's ray trace reflections on the eyes, though. Like we don't see the environment though, right? Like we only see the speck that's kind of reflected there. I mean, it's not bad in like any sort of way, but
It's still convincing enough.
yeah, no, like it still looks pretty
Do you
cool
think-
there.
Do you think for these particular shots they use a different model for the face?
it would be very common to do so. You know, like that's a very common video game thing. I mean, like it's not a secret. Like most games, they have a cinematic LOD and they have like a LOD that's for gameplay purposes. You know, because like it doesn't make sense, right? Like when you're looking at a model from this distance here to
Peach Fuzz doesn't make sense. Yeah. yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you know, like we've looked last week at the like the Mike Seymour head, right? And like the Peach Fuzz in there, like what they had done was like, I don't remember like how many triangles there was, but there was like something like 80,000 triangles for Peach Fuzz. You know, like Peach Fuzz is so incredibly expensive in terms of polygons because like usually every little hair has to be kind of represented as separate geometry there. It doesn't make sense to have that when you're in gameplay. We don't really see it here, right? So yeah, it's probably just lotted out there.
Are they using some kind of shaders or they just the geometry itself?
For Peach Fuzz?
Yes.
I assume it's geometry.
Oh my god.
I don't think you would be able to have really nice Peach Fuzz. Like you can't really do that easily in a shader because you know the whole thing about Peach Fuzz is that it sort of catches light, right? Like here, like on the silhouette of the character there. So it has to be some kind of geometry of some kind, right? Else you wouldn't have something that kind of sticks out. You can't do that with like parallax occlusion mapping or like displacement. You know, like that would be. I think that would be too complicated. So it has to be separate geometry. I don't know how much it is, but like the Mike Seymour head that we've looked at was like something like 80,000 triangles just for the Peach Fuzz, right? So, you know, like it's kind of funny, you know, like when people kind of ask like, you know, a common question people like to ask is like, oh, how many polygons can we afford for like characters? Nowadays, especially with AAA characters, it's like, guys, that question for me stopped making sense a while ago. You know, like it doesn't make sense anymore to even be asking that particular question there, like how many polygons can you afford for things? For me, just that whole question doesn't really make sense anymore because like if something is too heavy, you can always just LOD it out, right? You know, like that sort of Peach Fuzz. It's like you may as well just throw everything you want at it in terms of polygons for when you're in cinematics there. And if something is too heavy, you just reduce it for like the LOD that's for gameplay purposes and stuff. So yeah, you know, it's like even the question of like how many. Oh, look at that expression. So good. It's so good. They've done such a great work there.
I love the dinosaurs. So cool. They even added feathers. It's nice.
Yeah, right? It's like
Did they use blend shapes for the expressions or just any particular?
I was just wondering the same. Is it a combination maybe also of like height maps, blend shapes, and a rig? Probably, right?
I'd rather not talk about that.
Okay.
Talk about that. That's probably more than I could reveal, I think. So, yeah. I'll keep my mouth shut as far as that's concerned. I don't have any, like I don't have a lot of credits either when it comes to all of these things. You know, like truth be told, like, you know, I worked at Guerrilla Games for about 2 years. I've worked 1 year as a lead, and I worked 1 year as a principal. And there was a lot of ideas of how they wanted to improve Aloy that were already kind of set before I even joined the company there and stuff, you know? So, like, ultimately, like, this is, you know, there's a lot of people that are involved in creating characters like these. And ultimately, you know, like, I was there for what is you know, a comparatively small amount of time when you consider how much time it takes to make this actual game, right? So like ultimately like I obviously have my part in play in what you guys are looking here, but truth be told, I consider my part is relatively minor there, and there's so many people involved in making decisions and suggesting how to improve things that ultimately I don't consider I have necessarily a lot of merit, even if I was like lead on that particular team. Especially Guerrilla Games, you know, like they have a very collaborative process where a lot of people contribute to like ideas. You know, they're not afraid of speaking their mind and stuff like that. So, yeah, they've really done a wonderful job with this here. Was there underwater segments in the first game? I don't actually remember that. I don't think so, right? You couldn't go underwater, could you?
No.
Yeah,
Nope.
That's new.
I still have to play the first one. I haven't played
It's a really good game.
They also, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just going to point something out here. We can see the kind of dithering that's kind of happening on the hair there. So I guess they're using I'm not sure how that name goes right now, but it's like alpha to dither or something like that. Just, like that's a very common way now to kind of deal with transparency on like video games, because like video game engines are all deferred based now, and transparency and a deferred renderer really don't play well together there. So when you can kind of see a bit of a screen door effect like that, it usually means that the alpha technology is something we call dithering that's kind of used there, which is kind of replacing something that is kind of grayish in an alpha texture with this kind of screen door of one pixel is transparent, one is opaque, one is transparent, one is opaque there. And I've seen that used on like a lot of games. There was also Red Dead Redemption 2. I've seen that used. For me, the game actually where I've seen that it was the strongest one, or was the most noticeable, was Final Fantasy 15. For me, kind of, 7 Remake had that too, of course. It's like, it seems to be moving on to like what everyone is kind of using there, because it solves a lot of problems with like alpha there. So I'm not sure what they were using in Horizon 1, but this is the proper choice, I think. Someone wanted to say something?
That's what I thought about Final Fantasy. They have the hair of the characters is very noisy sometimes, depending on the scene, on the lighting. So yeah. That's what I was.
It's the best you can hope for. I think like once we start having like more like AI-based anti-aliasing solutions to become more popular in these sorts of things, we can probably fix a lot of that sort of perceived screen door effect. I think that sounds like something that could be fixable there through that kind of process. But especially Final Fantasy like 15 for me, it was like really noticeable. Like a little bit too much was kind of calling attention too much to itself. But it's like either that or you deal with a lot of transparency problems there.
That explains a lot too.
Yeah, it's crazy how sharp all the textures are. Now, I mean, this is a tech demo, of course, so will the final game have these things or not? We don't know, like there's like always like a lot of games that have people talk about downgrades and stuff, but I know Horizon came out and it looked very, very close, surprisingly close to that first reveal trailer that they had. So, I would expect the Horizon 2 when it comes out to pretty much look like this. Like PS5 too, and stuff, right? We should be able to afford like really, really sharp textures in real time there. So I wouldn't be surprised if the game ships and the textures look as good as they do here.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because every time I see a lot of people talk about downgrade, sometimes if you compare the launch version is really better than the E3 showings and etc. They really fix a lot of problems, and people don't notice because they want the demo.
The hair with the weapon clipping is a bit, it's a bit too much, right? I mean, maybe not. At the same time, we're kind of used to that in video games, so like it doesn't really bother me, to be honest. Like that's not usually the kind of things that kind of bother me. Like it's especially when you're working in production too. There's like always a bit of negotiation that has to happen between character artists and riggers as to like what's acceptable in terms of like clipping. There's like always a bit of a middle ground that has to be found there. That's one of the biggest challenges, I think, of making real-time video games, real-time characters for like video games is how can you get the clipping down to a manageable level, but also not sacrifice your vision for what the game is, what the art direction is.
Yeah, the only thing that bothers me it's more about the weight of the hair. Looks like there is missing a bit of the weight of the hair, because it's too it's for me maybe it's too much dynamic. I don't know. Something that I'm noticing, but I'm not sure if that's something easy to fix as well or not, because hair, especially this kind of hair, long hair, it's much heavier than I think.
Yeah, it seems they still have the same issue. This game, that they are a little bit too dynamic.
Yeah.
So I agree, it misses some weight because long hair is actually quite heavy.
Yeah.
Looks more like she's underwater time with the hair, so floaty.
Yeah, especially if she's underwater, the hair it's heavier in. So, but yeah.
Also, I see so many gameplay changes also. It's previously the grappling thing which she's doing, that thing is not in the first game, and the quick time event, I don't know that is quick time or not. Means she's in the previous video, she's just while using the electric charges, she's just changes everything and then boom.
To like finish off the dude there?
Sorry?
When she kind of stabbed the guy with like her spear there?
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy's face too got a lot of work done. Yeah, like, actually, let me go back. Let me just check again the, look how crazy sharp this is. I don't think the textures on Horizon 1 were as sharp as this. This looks like really, really high res and stuff. There's like something a little bit unfortunate about this little tiny piece of his beard that's kind of there, you know, because kind of like if you're looking at his eyes, it kind of almost looks like he's missing a tooth or like something. It's kind of just unfortunate that like all these things, they kind of line up there in that particular very little shot. I don't know if they can go in here and just clip that little piece out here.
Laura, hair is created using haircut technique or is a mesh?
Horizon 1 here was hair cards, and it looks like, I mean, it kind of looks the same way, right? I don't know if we can easily spot whether these are hair cards or not.
I think they are like, still clamps. So yeah.
Usually when you see texture that's like this kind of clumped up together somewhere, it's probably hair cards.
Thank you.
Can I check the other character, Laura, that you were showing?
You want to go back? Let's go back.
Yeah.
Where was
the guy? Just the guy. I was noticing something that I don't know. Wanted to know your thoughts as well. Seems like the hairline from the other character. It's. There was a shot previously.
Yeah, I think it was before that.
Yeah.
What did you want to see?
The airline. I don't know if the air it's like on top or it starts from the. You know what I mean? It's something that yeah. It's from the back, no?
There does look like there's like a bit of blending that's kind of missing there, perhaps, but unless that's the top of the hair.
Okay.
Maybe a bit of shadowing there will kind of help.
The folds are really nice on this guy. Really like it.
Yeah, they're really showing off that face, right? They're like, hey, look at Aloy's
As they
face.
should.
As they should, yeah, of course.
Also, mech scales also increased, I think. I don't know, but from the previous games, they seems a bit larger in size.
Her freckles look more prominent too. I think I remember, like, even playing through Horizon 1, like, her freckles aren't all that obvious, you know? But when we see her, like, her freckles look a lot more, they're a lot sharper, I guess they have.
Yeah, you could see that on the first one. You knew they were there. But on this one, they look so much better. I don't know. I think that's the word. They look sharper.
Yeah, that's really cool. This whole thing there.
That's weapon is not in the first one. They included some new.
Her face looks indeed so much better, but I feel like I would like her eyebrows to be a bit wilder. They feel like so tidy, and I don't know how that would be possible there. You know, like they're so clean. I don't know. It seems a bit unnatural to me.
Yeah. Aloy, she's wild. She lives in the wild. She's wild. She's a very, like, she's, I don't know how to say, but yeah, you have this very wild looking character where everything is very, you know, you can see that she takes really well, like, good care of herself, but she obviously lives out in the wild, like dangerous machines and stuff. But she never misses an occasion to tweeze her eyebrows.
Also, environments are so gorgeous. They also change so much.
There's something interesting here, actually. Oh, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Like, what's going on there? See, like her hand is kind of just touching a little bit this part of the cloth, and it just starts to shake and like move in like a very interesting organic way. Like, you don't often see cloth simulation that's good. You know, let's just watch it again. It's like little detail there. Yep, there you go. You know, that's like such a small thing, but it really like adds just a tiny little secondary movement to the character. It's really interesting. It's like all the textures, they really look like they're a lot sharper overall. It's pretty cool. You know, like, speaking of like low res and like stuff like that, then we will, you know, like how crazy detailed must a low res be to be able to support all these tiny little details left and right, you know, like all these little pieces that are all just sort of raised and sort of unevenly placed there. It's like all of this has to be supported in the low res in some way, shape, or form, right? I think that's one thing about like low res that people usually don't get. You know, it's like, if you want to do a proper low res, it's not just about just doing like a zero mesh and then you're done. You know, like it's not a bad starting point, but there's so much more it has to go into making like a really good low res than that. You know, and there's a really high attention to like little details you have to spend in there if you really want to be able to really capture some really beautiful like 3D shapes on your final character there. You know, and it shows that they really care about that. Is that like fuzz on cloth? Is that what we're looking at here? See these little tiny little fibers? It looks like they got like fuzz, like fuzz on their cloth now or something. I guess you gotta.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Wow.
I don't think the peach fuzz. Maybe it's there. It's hard to spot. From that
what impresses me most is that the quality of the accessories in the characters is astounding. It's really good.
can see that the shadows are clearly like the lighting has changed. You know, this is now cinematic lighting or like something. Like it's like the shadows look a lot better there than they did just a second ago. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Any more thoughts, guys?
I think
Pretty.
I would add some marks on the arms, or some just fighting marks, because she's always fighting, and her arms are always like with the skin, clean skin. You know, I don't know if it's easier to do that or not, or because maybe it's another texture. You know, loading another texture might be complicated.
I don't think that would be a texturing problem as much as it is maybe just
decals or something. I don't know.
I don't think the technical side is what would stop them from doing something like that, you know. That's probably more like art direction at that point, you know. You know, like it's a very hopeful game. These sorts of things are like, if you have a character that's like all super scarred, maybe it doesn't look very like it's more realistic, quote unquote. But is that really in line with what the vision is for the franchise, the kind of emotions it wants to convey within with the players there? So if they're not there, I don't think it would be a technical problem. I think if they're not there, it's because they've made a conscious artistic choice that's not what they wanted, I guess.
As far I know, there's the Aloy scan is done by some near to the director, and they don't want to be like that. Means she's a warrior, she's everything, and they wanted to be like that. Means she's kind of bulletproof like that, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, she literally is bulletproof, right? I mean, she gets shot so much. I'm sure a normal human would not have survived such an encounter as what she had before. But she's just way too badass for that. Like, she ain't gonna let a mammoth kill her. Like, no scratch.
I'm really curious to see where they will take the direction of this game. What will they change graphically?
I don't think they've announced a release date, right? No, they haven't. Well, still gotta wait, guys. It'll come out one day eventually. Well, that is beautiful work at the team at Guerrilla Games. You guys have done a fantastic job of this. You deserve to be proud for your work. So, yeah, pretty cool. All right, guys, let's talk about the character art for video game pipeline then. Let's really break that down and really sort of understand. So we have just looked at a lot of characters here. I want to look at a few other ones. The first question that I want to start with really is really just a question of how many people are involved in producing characters for AAA video games there? Because the answer might surprise you. You may think that like, yeah, there's one character artist that does like everything from start to finish and does the hair and the body and the face and the expressions, and like probably not. It's probably not how that goes there. Let's look at a few other like 3D models and let's really start to break that down there. Because like ultimately what we'll see is that the same kind of roles, they kind of always come back, you know? Like ultimately the role of who creates characters for video games, or how many people are involved, like although that changes a lot from production to production, the fact still remains that there is like the same roles, they kind of always kind of seem to come back on a regular basis there. So I have a few videos that are interesting to break down. And I'll give you guys a link to these videos, but I also mention what the name is so you can easily find them. Let's look a little bit at the characters that they have made for Uncharted 4, in fact. So there's this video here that's called the PlayStation Experience. So this was for Uncharted 4. Like, looking at a date that's like practically like 7 years ago, like almost 8 years ago. It's like, God, I was like old. Like that was like a long time ago. But when this came out, this was like really mind-boggling. And the characters that they have made for like Uncharted 4, they still hold up, you know, like it still is beautiful work here. I don't know if they have made something like this for The Last of Us 2. I don't think so, right? I think this is the latest talks that they have given from Naughty Dog. I think it's these one, but I could be wrong. Maybe I missed out a few that they have given on The Last of Us there, but like it's very obvious, right? Just how many people are involved in character production. You know, like when you look at their team there that they have, you know, there's like a bunch of them, and they're just passing the microphone on. Now, of course, these are all, or like a lot of them, people who do different characters entirely. You know, but ultimately, you probably can't expect as many people as what you're seeing here, like, which is like totally, it's like 5 or 6 people. They're probably like directly involved with each of the characters that go within a particular production there, you know? Like, when you look at characters for AAA video games, let's just go through some pictures instead, so we can start to point out things more easily there. Like, so these are screenshots from that particular talk. You guys can pretty much always see the name of the talk on top of the pictures I'm going to show here. Yeah, like creating characters, right? Like you have to be great at Marvel's Designer. You have to be great at anatomy. You have to be great at textures and shaders, like real-time shaders. If you want to do characters for video games, you have to know your anatomy really, really well. You have to be great with things like hair, right? It's like if I just go through these, I don't think there's any hair shots in this one here, but like hair is like another one that's like really hard to get good at, but that we often ask from people who do character art there. So truth be told, you know, when you're making video games and you're working on AAA production there, there's always more than one person, you know, or usually, I'm not going to say always, but there usually is more than one person that is involved in doing all these different things. And the role of who does what for a character usually gets like spread out over multiple disciplines there. Like more and more, we see a specialization that kind of happens within character art there. And that's kind of what's very obvious if you guys watch this particular video here. But also just in general, like there's this specialization that happens where people start to get like the character art job gets split into smaller jobs in a way on a regular basis there, and it makes sense to do so. You know, like I think for me the first one that kind of got split off that I can kind of just recall from the top of my head is hair. You know, like that's the first one that I remember like really became its own discipline. You know, so now you have character artists and you have hair artists. You know, now I think on Uncharted, if I remember the videos I've watched on that particular game, I think that the people there doing character art are also the ones doing hair. I think they haven't split off into having a hair specialist, but it's very, very common to have that, you know? Like most video game studios now have a dedicated person who does hair. And it makes sense, you know, like how do you do great hair like this? Like it's not everyone who's got the patience, who's got the desire, who's got the knowledge to be able to do a great haircut there, right? And you will always have a better result if you give a task to someone who is specialized in that particular field than to someone who is just a generalist that may have done hair once or twice, like a few years ago there, right? So like, the demand for better and better characters with each for each console generation that comes out makes it so that more and more we have to split the role of who does character art, right? Like here's some screenshots of hair actually that we have done on Deus Ex. So that was also like I think around the time that Uncharted 4 came out, right? I think I've shown this haircut last week, by the way. So this is the work of Jack Choi. He was a senior character artist on the Deus Ex Mankind Divided team. Really awesome guy to work with. And this is a hair that he has done essentially using an in-house technology that we had called Pure Hair, which is essentially just a derivative of Hairworks or Tress Effects there. And like this is beautiful work that he has done, but like it's such a complex haircut, right? It's like you got short hair here, and that short hair has to look like it's very kind of organic, like it can't repeat itself too much, else like you're going to see the repetition and it's going to look very unnatural there. So even for short hair, you have to really break it up and you have to know like what you're doing there to make it look nice and organic there. But then you have all these like big clumps of like hair. Do I have the front shot of this here, by the way? Yeah, like take a look at the front, right? It's like it's not everyone who knows how to properly model something that complex. And so for me, hair really was the first thing that really got split off, you know? So already when you think of a character for a video game, you already think of at least 2 people who are involved. One is the person who does the character art or does the hair, and someone who does everything else, you know. But and so there are people who have careers in only making hair. If you guys want to break into the games industry and you're not afraid of doing something that's a bit repetitive and a bit masochistic there, hair is a great specialization to go into because it's always in high demand, because not a lot of people want to do that, you know? So like that's the first like specialization that sort of happened, or at least that I can particularly sort of point to, you know? I mean, not that, you know, in terms of time, this necessarily was the first one, but that like really became its own like discipline on the side there. That's really the first one I can spot off the top of my head there. And then afterwards, you know, like people who do character art, eventually we kind of also discovered that, hey, maybe it makes sense to have a person who is dedicated to body and face sculpting as opposed to the rest of the clothes that we have on a character, right? So, you know, if we go back to like Uncharted 4 here, like if you want to have some really great anatomy like this, even if you're using scans, you know, like scans won't give you data that's as clean as this. You still have to go back on top of it. You still have to tweak it. You have to know how to tweak it to make it better. Besides, like when you start to introduce scans in a production, usually the workload doesn't diminish. Sometimes the workload actually goes up, surprisingly, because suddenly it's like you have access to so much more data that you can use, you know, like you could scan hands in different poses like this, and then afterward, you know, you may want to create blend shapes based off of that. So suddenly you're not sculpting only one hand, you're sculpting like 5 hands, you know, like as we can see here, or like even more than that, right? So it's not because we have scans on productions that suddenly we do not have a need for someone who's very specialized when it comes to anatomy sculpting there. Faces, it's kind of the same thing. Sure, you have access to data, you know, to like scan data, but you still need to go back on top of it, and you still need to tweak it, and you still need to make it better, or perhaps just bring it more in line with what the art direction is, you know. Even if these things are made by an outsourcing partner, you still want to have someone in-house who is responsible for that, who's responsible for communicating with an outsourcing partner who can give feedback. So you still need someone who is specialized in facial and body anatomy there, right? So that's another one of those that it's like at some point, yeah, it's like from the character art job, it's like body and face sculpting kind of more or less also went its own different direction there, you know? So we're down to 3 people involved in a particular character so far. We have the person doing the hair, person doing the body and the face. Which, you know, could be a different person, or it could be the same person. So that is, you know, maybe 1 or 2 different specializations there, depending on the needs there. But let's just consider, you know, a person who is specialized in organic sculpting there. And so you're left with the clothes for the character there that has to be done by someone else then. And even then, you know, it's like ultimately it's like, yeah, okay, clothes, but then, you know, you probably also want to have some really great, really realistic materials, some like a great attention to detail when it comes to like materials and shaders and how does light react with the surface and stuff like that, right? So like beyond that too, it's like at some point it's like, yeah, you know, even texturing and shading kind of starts to become a bit of a specialized subject that's a little too much for most people to really focus on, right? Because if you're spending all your days in Marvel's Designer or in ZBrush sculpting characters, although you want to think as much as possible about the different materials that you have to create in 3D afterward, truth be told, would it make sense to have someone else on the side who's also kind of specialized and really worrying about, okay, how can we get cloth that reacts the best possible way with light and stuff like that, right? So ultimately, you also had at some point the specialization of someone doing shaders for characters, or developing shaders, or communicating with the technical art team on a production as far as shaders is concerned. Sometimes you have a technical art team that does all of that. Sometimes there is a character artist on team who is more of a technical character artist at that point, who is the person who owns, you know, shader creation and creating textures or scanning materials and really sort of pushing all of that angle there, you know, and just getting data for the people doing the general character art to be able to afterward apply on their character there, right? Because when you look at something like this, there's really 2 things here. One is creating the materials, creating the cloth, creating the repeating textile textures, if you will. and then you need someone to apply it on a character, right? So that second part is usually what is still in the realm of someone doing general character art, if you will. But so that's already like 4 people, right? So that's already like four different roles for each character that you have. You have the, so you have the organic sculpting specialist, you have the hair specialist, you have essentially the clothes specialist, and then you have the shader specialist, And all of these roles may or may not be people who are on the production. It may be people who are working remotely or externally. It could be an outsourcing studio. It could be a character artist or another department entirely that kind of owns some of these different things, depending on the particular architecture of a project somewhere. So the role of someone who does character art is a very fragmented affair, But nowadays we're still in a situation where when we understand character art creation for video games, usually, or when we think of the role of a character artist in a video game, we traditionally think of the person doing the outfit. That's kind of usually the one that we're kind of thinking of. Like, it's the person doing just the clothes, probably starts from a base body that already exists, that has been done previously, and then simply makes the clothes and doesn't necessarily do the head, necessarily do the hair there. Now, once more here, that's going to change a lot based on different productions. And this isn't something that is true everywhere. If you have a smaller studio, if you have an indie studio, usually the same person will wear more hats. You'll have more of a character artist that perhaps also handles face and hair creation. But in those bigger studios there, it makes a lot of sense to simply split that role into many individuals there. Yeah, so if you take a look and you listen to this Uncharted talk, and you guys can simply just Google the name that's on the top left, actually, if you want to find it, on YouTube there. So this is the work of Yibing Jiang. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that properly there. And, like, her job is to do like stuff like this, right? Just like build these very complex shaders in like real time and stuff like that, and like things that start to become a little too much, or at the very least, even if a regular character artist could be taking care of that, it makes sense to pay someone to really worry about how to create this kind of thing separately there, and really spend the time on that it needs, else you'll just never see the end of it. So that was her role, essentially. Her role was the shader artist there. I don't know that she's a character artist per se. I don't know her history, but she was certainly the shader artist on Uncharted 4 there. And you can see here the beautiful work that she has done there. So there's more examples of that in that particular YouTube video there. It's a really, really great talk, by the way, as to how to create characters and how different people split the role. We're obviously not talking about the role of riggers and people who do concept art, and even less talking about someone who does art direction, who is also very much involved in character creation. Although we don't necessarily think of them, they still have something to say, and they have an important role to play when it comes to creating character. So like ultimately, creating a character is something that so many people are involved. Like, it goes way beyond the person doing the character art. It's like ultimately, even if you're a character artist working on something, truth be told, like, you can't not say that it's not a team effort in the end. That's like 3 negations. So hopefully that came out properly. It's like, it's always the work of a team to create characters there, for video game there. So we won't really talk about the hair pipeline, and we won't really talk about the body pipeline, because in those cases, it's usually just, let's say in the case of body creation, like the modern day pipeline starts from scans, really. And you get scans, and then you simply retouch the scans. I don't know that this is what happened here, but this is what the common pipeline is nowadays. It is simply scan based, and then you simply tweak that and you simply make that better after the fact there. So that's kind of what that pipeline is. Hair, we'll have someone come and talk about that pipeline once the time is right, so I won't delve into that either. So essentially what we're left to talk about today, what is the general pipeline for character art for video games that people really usually think about? Well, they think about the general pipeline for outfits, really. That's kind of what it comes down to, right? Oh, by the way, here's more work for shaders. Like, shaders is something that people don't think of enough as a really interesting specialty as far as character art is concerned. But shaders are so wonderful. Like it's so good to like just make stuff that looks as good as this, right? In engine there and stuff like that. I think it's a really wonderful specialization for people to do character art, to go into shaders and materials there, because there's a lot there to understand. But so this is the work. So this is the work of the shader artist that worked, or at least one of them. You know, I assume there is more than one that worked on Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The name of this guy is Mathieu Goulet, and he has a few videos like on the shader work that he has done. So he was a particular instance of a character artist who was a specialized shader artist there. Let me just show you guys his ArtStation page. You guys can go, like, he's got some really beautiful demos, by the way, for all the shaders that he has created on Assassin's Creed Odyssey there. You guys can go in here and just watch a lot of what he has done, you know? So it's a very, like, I think it's a specialization that's really interesting, because it's a specialization that really, that is both very technical and very artistic at the same time, right? It's like, you want to create some really beautiful materials, so you have to know how to represent materials interestingly in an artistic sense, but you also have to know enough about the technical side to be able to do like crazy shaders that can blend between different states of wear and colors and stuff like that. I'm not sure why the screen keeps flashing white. It's kind of disturbing. Yeah, so like they have this shader set up here where like in real time they can do stuff like have mud appear on the character's face, change skin tone, colors, these sorts of things. You guys can see some of the masks here that are used. You know, you can see here, I think, like a real-time mud system that they have where you can have more or less mud on someone's face, you know, I guess depending on how the game goes, you know. So that's a specialization that people don't necessarily think about, but that is certainly open to people who do character art. And, you know, things aren't getting simpler there as time goes on. You know, shaders are always getting more and more complex and more detailed there. So it's not a specialization that's going to disappear anytime soon, you know. So he's done some really, really beautiful work on this, especially the real-time like cloth here, where you can see some real-time wear and tear appear on the fabric and stuff. It's really beautiful work, and we'll spend some time to really break this down and talk about how we can even build that ourselves together once we get to the layered material classes at the end of July there. We'll talk in great detail as to how to go about creating this, but essentially the basic idea is that you have to have multiple live versions of your materials that exists in real time, and then you simply blend between some of these using different masks or different parameters, like how dirty someone is or something like that, based off of the gameplay there. And you kind of blend between all these different things, you know. And so I personally think it's a really, really awesome thing. And so yeah, so for that too, you need someone, you know, that's specialized in there, that really just spends their time just worrying about these kind of things. So this is some beautiful work. But back to the pipeline then, it means that when people think of the general character art pipeline, they really think of the pipeline as it relates to an outfit, you know, like taking a base body that has been done previously and then simply creating the clothes on top of it. That's pretty much what we understand now by general character art on the production there. And even then, like, you have more and more like roles that are getting like different studios that are like, no, we have someone who's the hard surface specialist and someone who's the Mars designer specialist. And so like the role of a character artist is getting more and more fragmented as time goes on, you know. So it makes a lot of sense for someone who wants to break within the game industry to really think of that, think of really picking up a particular specialty for them to really develop, so that they are more interesting for a production who is using more of these specialized roles. So let's talk about what the pipeline looks like when we are creating an outfit for a character. Then what does the pipeline usually look like? What are the different steps involved? Let's go and let's write these down, and let's talk a little bit about the time that it takes at each particular step there. And we can also look at some data at the same time while we are breaking that down, and just looking at like how much time it actually takes for pretty much every step of the process there. So first of all, you know, it's no secret that the pipeline starts at the concept art stage. You know, that's really where that starts. Should I go vertical or should I go horizontal with this? Let's go from top to bottom with this, so that I can control better where this is on my screen here. So, you know, it's no secret that like at the top of the list is the concepting stage, you know. So this is done by both the narrative team. So usually a character starts with a bio that is written for that particular character there. So who is the character? It's like usually like a one pager or something like this, just like one page that's written as to what is the bio of the character, what's their personality, what are they trying to accomplish, what's their role in the game, these sorts of things, And then that gets thrown to the concept artist to do the concept art, of course, And usually at that stage, depending on the kind of character, you may have like something like I've seen cases where you had like 50 variations of one character. Like, I'm not sure that's necessarily an average. I don't think it is. But it's not uncommon to have like 50 variations. 50 times has the concept artist gone in here and done like, okay, this is what the character could look like. Could look like this, could look like this, could look like this, could look like this, like that. And really just sort of putting down on paper every possible variation in terms of size, in terms of shape, in terms of color that you could imagine. Usually, especially for main characters, no stone is left unturned at this particular stage, unless you are Frederick Bennett, which just seems to just vomit out great concepts from the beginning. If you guys watch the interview with him, he quite funnily talks about that. He just usually makes a concept, and that's like a really solid one from like the beginning, as he has done on Mankind Divided there. So they are special people like that. I just have that sort of ability there. But usually it's common to just do like just to do variations upon variations upon variations there. And for concept artists to work on the same concept for like sometimes weeks and months, if it's a main character, a concept artist could definitely work on it and just draw out variations for months upon time, and just trying out different things there. So it's very, very common to have something like this that could even take up to like 50 variations of a particular character there. So in terms of time, let's not put a time on this, because it's really, really hard to, it would be really hard to just nail that down there. Let me move this aside here. And here, let's talk about, let's put down here time. So in terms of time, let's just say this is very variable. Can't really just put a neat little number on that. I mean, it takes as much time as you need to really create the characters that you need there. And then afterward, then it goes on to people who do 3D character art. So this is where you guys come in, finally. Okay, I want to make this a little bit interactive with you guys. What is the first step once you are given a concept? Let's test the knowledge that you all have. So you're given a concept. How do you go about starting your work? What is the first stage there involved in the process? Who's brave and wants to throw out the first?
Blocking the
base mesh.
I was gonna ask if I had a base mesh available in this scenario.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's say that a base mesh is available, so that you don't have to worry about that one.
Okay. Yeah. Blocking out.
First, we have to read the concept properly. Means, as you say, we have bio, we have the player bios. So we need to discuss with the art directions. Means how will be the player interactivity, and what's the story behind it, and how we going to approach it.
That's very true. That's a great place to start, by the way. So that definitely needs to happen. It's not the answer I'm looking for, but I accept that as a very, very good answer. Even though I'm looking for an answer that's slightly different, that's perhaps more general. But yeah.
Breakdown.
References. There you go. You have to start with that. You have to start gathering a shit ton of references. That's where you start, because like a lot of people are like, yeah, here's a concept art. Let me go and block it out. It's like, no. It's like, first of all, you have to go through the boring job of gathering references and stuff. And in fact, let's lump all these things into the same thing of, let's say, information gathering. How's that? Because a lot of people, they think of skipping this step, and that's a mistake, Gathering, which is pretty much everything you guys have said, in fact. So, which is, here, let's make a nicer little graph of this. So this is time. This is description. This is the step. And let's call this the stage. Let's call this the stage or something like that. Stage, step, description, and time. So the description for what information gathering is. So you guys have pretty much nailed it. So references, conversations with art direction. I'll just write 80. We said, since we're gathering information or data gathering, if you will, we could even add in there if we want, just getting a base body, right? So just getting like everything that you need to start, because a lot of people skip this step, getting all the data. A lot of people skip this step. And how much time does it take? Well, let's just write, I don't know, let's write 2 days or something.
Just one quick question, Laura.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you can ask the concept artist for his references too, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And in fact, you should, That's like the first thing that I do. It's like, hey, could I have your huge library of references that you have? Like all the 500 that you have? But you still need to go in there and sort of look at them yourself, and sometimes you want to grab like different ones too, Because like usually what I see about concept artists is that they don't necessarily think that hard about, let's say, the kind of fabrics that you're going to have, the kind of materials, they don't necessarily think that hard about it. They're just like, yeah, this is leather and this is cloth, and like for them beyond that, it doesn't really matter too much, like what they're doing there. So you still have like theirs is a good starting point, but they usually have like, they'll have one random picture of cloth in their references. They're like, this is the cloth. It's like, okay, but like we need like an army of like references of what does this cloth look like in different circumstances, these sorts of things, like this is what let me bring this up here for a second. This is what my reference folder looked like for Vaclav there. Let me see here. So this was, yeah, so you guys can see, so this is when I was working on Deus Ex and all of what I had there. So whole bunch of stuff. First of all, I got a bunch of different paint overs and concepts and like other stuff that I had asked the concept artist to kind of clarify for me. But beyond that, like it's a lot of stuff like things are just paint overs, right? Like I have a folder here just for tears in fabric. How does fabric tear up? So that I could really sort of properly study that so that I could afterward damage cloth properly on the character there. So like, I would even go so far as spend some time to really study different tears in fabric, because this guy had a lot of tears in his clothes there, So you want to really like study each of these little things in great detail there and really spend the time to do so, And after you're done with that, I guess we could kind of extend the concept thing stage all the way down here, I suppose. Okay, and after that, we started in 3D there. In terms of time, I can see the time is actually going by. I think maybe we'll combine the deep dive of each of these steps at the same time that we're kind of drawing out the pipeline there and sort of breaking down the pipeline step by step. I think it makes sense to do so that we manage things in terms of time. So let's actually do that, guys. I can see it's 1:48 right now. It's actually perfect time to take a break. So why don't we do that? Let's take a 12-minute break, and once we come back, let's continue and really break down all the stages of character creation when it comes to the 3D part of things.
And seriously, I never seen these Uncharted things which you shown us today, and it's very, very intriguing.
There's more than just that one too. Like they have like at least 2 or 3 videos. There's also a ZBrush Summit talk that they have given. Uncharted 4. If you just type in Uncharted 4 ZBrush Summit, it's also very, very interesting. There's like at least 2 or 3 talks that I had given when Uncharted 4 was coming out that are really informative. Really taught me a lot. Like that was like 2014, I think, that we had seen. So I was myself, I think. I don't even think I was a lead back then. I think I was before that. So like I learned a lot by just watching these guys work.
Previously, when you said we talked about something like scanning, when I asked how they did the thing in Horizon, then I searched in internet about the scans and how they do the things in Horizon, and I just amazed. Things so much change and how they work, and because I'm pretty much new to this field, and it's so amazing to learn these things. We behind while we are playing, we don't know these kind of things. We don't think about those things. So yeah, that's really good to know.
Cool. Well, I'm glad
Thanks.
this is useful. Yeah. It's my pleasure. That's what we're here for. Cool.
Thanks,
All right, guys. Let's continue where we left it off. So essentially, we're talking about the pipeline. So just going through every step of the character art creation pipeline. As we have defined, this is really as it relates to outfits, really. Because that is a much longer one there, and that is what people usually think of the what people on character art productions do. Essentially, this is the bread and butter of what is happening, really. So we defined that. So information gathering is done. We have gathered our references. We've talked to the art director. We've talked. We got all our data, our base body. We are ready to go, right? So what comes after that, guys? What comes after that?
Block. The high poly.
You don't see the block out.
I wish there was a voting feature here so that we could get people to vote. Is there a voting feature here? Is there something like that?
Not really.
No. Eh? So the correct answer is the block out. That is the correct answer. So high poly, we actually have like spoiler alert. There's a lot of steps before we get to the high poly stage. It's really far down here. So block out stage. I mean, not that many steps, but it's not the one after the block out, surprisingly. So block out or sketching or however you want to call that. So the block out stage. Okay. What are we accomplishing at the block out stage? Why is it even there? Why is it important? And what are we doing at it? Let's write down here what the different points are, the important points of the block out stage. Why are we doing a block out, guys?
To be able to
proportions.
To capture the essence of the character.
It's a very good answer.
Oh.
That's really solid. So proportions, there's like things that I like to always repeat. So let's see how many of you are actually attentive to what I usually say. Silhouette. And there's one that is
all the information or all the subtools, I guess, or something like, I don't know, the specific word.
Don't you watch my classes?
Form,
The
rhythm
of
sorry.
I said it a few times.
Please.
Guys, go watch my classes on outgang.studio. That's a place where you can learn character art if you guys don't know about it. Construction. The final one is construction. But so like for me, these are the important things that we want within a blockout to know whether like a blockout has been done well or not. But I especially also like the answer that is someone's got a microphone open, by the way. I don't know who it is. Thank you guys. I love the answer. I think it was Samar. I think it's you that said that, but I could be wrong. Essence of the character. Capturing the essence of the character. That's beautifully put. Because people are like capturing the essence. Because people are like, what does that mean? What is the essence of a character? It's like, what is that? Capturing the essence, you know? It's like, do we distill it until like oil comes out of the character? Is that the kind of essence? Like this very fragrant character art oil? Is that the essence of the character? It's like, no. You know, for me, the word essence, it's just, it's kind of like, I think this part, capturing the essence, is a very, it's a deliberately vague thing, you know? It just means that people look at a concept and look at the 3D and say, yeah, this is the character. You've captured the character, you know? Because for me, the concept of even what I consider to be a character is even beyond the idea of something that is 2D or 3D. For me, the character is an abstract representation of someone, you know? Like when we talk about someone's character there, like for me, like what is a character is something that is actually very abstract, you know? It's not something that is tangible or that you can actually see. And so you have captured the essence when someone can look at your 3D model and say, this is the same character. You have captured the character. It's an extremely vague thing that you can't really define better than that. But ultimately, you kind of start to kind of notice it when you do a lot of character art. You're like, oh, this detail that's on the concept art is very important to this character being this character, you know? Whereas this other detail, it's just visual noise. It doesn't really matter if that thing is kind of not there, you know? I think it's part of what's hard sometimes about doing block out is kind of really figuring out, okay, what makes this character who they are, but ultimately kind of trying to do a bit of that reflection ultimately usually leads you to observe and capture things that perhaps aren't necessarily obvious at first glance there. So proportions, silhouette, construction, capturing the essence. Anything else? I think that's kind of the most important ones, but anything else I'm not thinking of, guys, that is important at the blockout stage?
At what point should we be worried about primary shapes on that?
Yeah, for me, that goes within the proportions there.
Okay.
So we can kind of add that in there.
With the
Forms?
I was thinking of, from a technical standpoint, if this is an entirely new character, getting something blocked out and sending it to rigging to see if they can mess with it a bit.
Yes, but let's keep that one for right after.
Oh, okay.
Like, let's say that you're in ZBrush and you're modeling something out. Like, is there anything? Because like, truth be told, I think this is it. Really, I think we're kind of covering all our ground here. So I was just kind of seeing if there's anything that you guys could think that I have missed. But I think this is like, in a general sense, an important part here. So yeah, Compton, as you have mentioned, what comes after the blockout station? After you're done in ZBrush, really blocking this out.
We're gonna get out like a workable mesh for, I don't know how to.
High poly?
Yeah. I wouldn't say high poly yet.
Integration.
Yeah. That's the best word for it.
And iteration.
Get that stuff in engine. Check it out.
Yeah. Get that in there. Get that in engine. Prompto, you know. Just prompto. So like cut all the corners, do like some Z-remesh. Z-remesh, yeah. Do some like dirty UVs. Bake out like solid colored colors. Solid colored materials. the idea, you want to get that in the engine as quick as you can. You want to do like the quickest job that you can. It's very, very dirty. You want to be able to send that off to rigging, and you guys want to be able to see the character in the engine there. Because if you skip over that, you'll never be able to see what is the point of view of the end player there. What will the work actually look like once they're actually looking at it within the game there, right? It's like, if you don't integrate this in a dirty way, you will be missing out on such an important part of the information as to whether or not you have captured your character properly or not, you know? Here's some screenshots of Horizon. These are taken from a talk that is on YouTube that you guys can watch from the art director that was there when that essentially gave me the job there, essentially. So he's the guy who hired me there. His name is Dan Calvert. And he gave a talk in 2018 that's called Repopulating the Earth. I've shared it a few times on Outgang.studio there, but if you haven't come across it before, it's a great talk on character art production. It's on YouTube, lasts about 60 minutes. It's easy to watch. It's a great thing to watch. And he talks about the whole process of developing the characters for Horizon 1 there. And one of the things that he shows is these pictures here. So this is a blockout. This is a blockout that is completed. So this is the ZBrush blockout, if you will. And this, I guess it's the only picture I have. You guys can see, probably should have captured a better screenshot than that. Haha. Let's go and watch the video. You guys can see what the blockouts look like in the engine. Someone's got a microphone open, by the way. Elizabeth, it could be you. If you don't mind muting yourself until ready to talk. Thank you. So this is the this video here. So this talk that Dan gave, it's called Repopulating the Earth. And around 20-minute mark, if memory serves me correctly. He shows essentially some of those blockouts that have been integrated within the engine there. Where is that? Somewhere here. No further than that. It's just there for just a second or two. Here we go. Kind of looks like this, right? So these are the blockouts. You can see
these
it's like
characters
super
are recognizable.
dirty. It's like there's not much work done on materials and stuff, but you have a representation of the character that's in there. You can see in real time what will the character look like once they're in an actual like real setting. You know, that is important for the players there and stuff there, right? It's like, look at a character that's in the back. It's like her skin colors don't even match. You know, like who cares at this point? It's like that's not what we're there for. We want to be able to judge whether the proportions are good, the silhouette's good. Whether the character is compelling, have we captured the essence of the character, these sorts of things. That's what we're here for once we integrate our blockout in the engine there. It also gives the chance for riggers to start to already start working on the character too, and kind of have a chance to see what the challenges will be for them, you know? So you want to integrate the blockouts, but you want to do it quickly. You don't want to spend too much time on this. And there often usually is feedback that comes from that, you know, like you'll see the character in context like this, and then you'll be like, wait, no, the proportions of the character are wrong. There's something that needs to be fixed, you know. So you're doing this because you also want to do this whole iteration approach, right? So ultimately, if I go back here to have my brush, yeah, here we go. So ultimately, at the initial blockout stage, you'll spend maybe about 5 days of this. This is about the time that it takes for that, to create a blockout for like a character there. And then for the integration and like iteration, let's put another 5 days down, okay? Now, once more here, these are, you know, these quickly become not representative at every studio that exists. Everyone has different numbers for these. But, you know, you can kind of expect the whole iteration process here to take about 2 weeks, perhaps, you know? So the idea is that you kind of have this, like, this is almost something that kind of goes up and down in a way. It's like you do the blockout stage, you do a quick integration of the character, You spend a few days, just to do a quick Z remesh of the character, these sorts of things. And then depending on the visual feedback that you have once you're in there, once you get a chance to see the character in context and these sorts of things, then you may have to shoot it back at the blockout stage. And you may have to do a new iteration there on the character. You may have to change the proportions, improve the proportions, these sorts of things. And then you go back and you reintegrate the character within the game engine. You send it back to the riggers. They do their updated skinning, quick and dirty skinning, these sorts of things. And so you have this loop that kind of happens. And it happens however many times it needs to happen until the character has been put down really, really solidly, right? So, will this take 5 days? I mean, in certain cases, this could take up to like 3 months, to 3 months, because often there are a lot of bottlenecks here, and like rigging too. They have to have their own schedule aligned with yours so that they can do some work. Sometimes the character art team will do a bit of skinning there, just very quick and dirty skinning, usually a skin transfer of a base body that's already been skinned, just to get stuff in there, But let's just say this whole process can be very quick. And it can be very long too, depending on everyone's schedule, depending on the number of iterations that you need to do there. This whole process is very variable in terms of time. But I've seen cases where this could take 3 months, because skinning is bottlenecked. And it's like, yeah, we don't have a chance to take care of this for the next few months or something like that. Well, let's say 1 month. Because 3 months is very, very extreme there. 5 days to like 1 month, let's say. Okay. So you say approve blockout here. Once everyone's happy with the blockout and everyone can feel like we can move on. So let's call this the blocking stage. Or the blockout, which I guess is same as this, but there is more than one step involved here, as we can see. Okay, what happens after that? Once the blockout has been approved, guys, what's next?
Now we really can start the high poly. I think that's finally the time to start.
I would have said secondary shapes. So like after, if the blockout is the first stage, then we would have like maybe some fatty tissues and stuff like that.
All right. Anyone else has any answers to propose?
I agree. It's ZBrush time.
It's almost ZBrush time, but it's not quite ZBrush.
Okay, almost
Would Marvelous Designer come into play here?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yes, it does.
Yay!
Yeah, never mind.
That early?
Yeah, I mean, that's the best time, right? It's like we finished our blockout stage. You guys have also seen how I like to use this inverse reconstruction approach, starting from, a blockout stage that's been completed. We take a character, and we convert it into Marvelous Designer there, like following this whole pipeline here, essentially. So it's pretty much Marvelous Designer time is straight up after the blockout stage. Now, there's a more general term, perhaps, that we can use here, and we can call it simulation, because Marvelous Designer is just a tool, really. And it's one of the tools that we can use to simulate data, but it may not necessarily be the only one. What else can we do here if it's not just doing Marvelous?
Modeling the accessories and other things from the character.
Let's keep that for the high poly stage.
Basic shaders, which will collaborate with the world engine and with the others.
That's much further down. We're at the simulation stage. We are looking to essentially either generate or acquire data.
So when I think of simulation, I'm thinking of cloth as well as hair. So does that mean that we would be doing hair this early in the process as well?
Hair is a completely different entity that really doesn't fit neatly in here, because there's like someone else that usually takes care of that, so it's not going to go in here. For me, like the term simulation, it's a bit generalistic, but it also encompasses scanned data, because ultimately Mars Designer is only one of the tools that you could use, and there's plenty of productions that are like that would rather like, especially more realistic ones, because you can't really do that if it's not realistic there, right? But for clothes, you could also just buy clothing that already have been like scanned, essentially. So the term simulation, it's a bit generalistic, but for me, it's anything that's been simulated, so to speak. And this is simulated in real life, if you guys see what I mean there. So something like this here. So scanned clothes, starting from scanned clothes, also makes a lot of sense in certain cases, depending on what you're trying to do there. Could also be things like, so scan data. This is a C. Something else would be using something like Vellum, which is, I guess we could put that here instead. Which, for those who don't know, this is the Houdini version of cloth simulation. Which I haven't used. I really want to get into it, though. I really want to learn how this tool works. I haven't learned it so far, but it seems like a very interesting tool, because Houdini, like, it's a lot more modular. It's a lot more... you can build more complex things in a modular way that feels like it would work a lot better there than by using Mars Designer, because ultimately Mars Designer is just one little box that does only one thing. But if you can use something like this here, you can probably do a whole lot of other stuff that may or may not be cloth, or that reacts with cloth, So for me, like, this is the simulation part. It's just acquiring all that data that you need, all that 3D data that you need, or that you need to generate, but that may not necessarily be sculpted, That may or may not also be cloth. So this Vellum thing is a cloth simulation, but as you guys can see, you can do other stuff with that too, because that's what Houdini is, like it's... gives you the chance to do more than just that. It's an effects software at its base. So I really want to have a chance to learn this at some point and see what we can do in terms of cloth simulation there. Really, really interested by this. I'm a lot more interested in spending time to learn this than to spend time to learn ZBrush cloth simulation. Which I have yet to see one person use it, by the way. I have never used a cloth simulation in ZBrush. And I literally do not know anyone who has used it either. But yeah, things like, you need like wires at some point. Who knows, right? If you have creatures, you could make some interesting stuff with this. Anyway, so simulation part, if you see what I mean. Yeah. So usually you do that on top of the base body that you have been given. What do we have here as an examples? I mean, if we go through the Uncharted stuff and you guys watch their presentation, this is pretty much their Mars Designer stage. So they took just the base body and they just literally went to town in Mars Designer, and pretty much, in their case, they could make probably like pretty much everything practically that's on Drake like that. Okay. So we do the simulation stage. So what comes after that? Now, everyone's afraid of suggesting something. What comes after the simulation stage?
Okay, it's ZBrush time.
It's ZBrush time, baby! Finally, we have arrived. I mean, there was There was some ZBrush at the blockout stage, so it's not as if you guys are left without anything to do there. But yes, it's ZBrush time. So let's make our high poly.
It's always ZBrush time.
It's always ZBrush time. It's like, this is ZBrush. Because, you use ZRemesher, you use UV Master. This is ZBrush. Yeah, they got plot simulation. This is ZBrush too, right? Yeah, it's all ZBrush. That's the mark of a true character artist.
We only use one tool and it's ZBrush.
So the high poly stage. So we say, improving our simulation data. And of course, sculpting anything that needs to be sculpted. So just sculpting. Okay, in terms of time, the simulation stage, by the way, so once more here, it varies a lot based on character, based on project, based on yada, 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 yada. You guys know where I'm going with this. Let's just pitch some numbers here that are more or less representative of how it is in general. I consider this is about 15 days. So maybe about 3 weeks spent within Marvel's Designer. Of course, if you start from a bunch of pre-made character scans, like clothing scans or these sorts of things, then you have a lot less of it to do. So that goes a lot faster there. But, in case you are Marvelous Designering everything, then yeah, probably 3 weeks sounds like a pretty reasonable amount of time. Oh, by the way, there was like something else that was really interesting too. Like if you guys really want to see modern day character pipelines, what they look like. And another one that I haven't prepared here, but that is really worth to check out is Resident Evil 7. RE7, so Resident Evil 7. Let's type in scanning. They have like some really awesome videos, but like especially some presentations that I've seen that are extremely, extremely informative there, and you get to see the whole pipeline and pretty much everything that they have used here, like all the scans that they have gotten there. But like they've also scanned like a lot of the characters close directly there. So this is something for you guys to like look into. Like they like even scan like a bunch of little things like these that are used within the game there. I don't remember what these things do, but they've like scanned a bunch of little objects too, like these that they've just created by hand.
I remember that they say that like almost all of the game is scanned, all assets of the game is scanned.
Yeah, there's so much of it in there. Yeah, see, they like literally went as far as to actually like paint actors' faces and stuff, and then just scan them and use them as is within the game there, So like that's not like 3D, that's like someone who's actually like hand painted someone's face and added like prosthetics and stuff, and then scan them afterward. There's there's a few presentations like actual like either PDFs or PowerPoints, but I think they were in Japanese. My memory serves me correctly, but you guys can find more and more information. There's a lot of information that they have shared. It's really, really cool to like read and stuff.
I think the name of the event is SEDEC. It's like a Japanese GDC.
Yeah. Do you know the name of it, by the way? Because then I could Google that right here. What was the name?
Not exactly, but the name of the event is SEDEC.
What's the name of it?
I'll type it out on the subscriber chat.
Sure.
Is it maybe the Tokyo Games show? That's maybe the name?
Yeah, it could have been. It's possible, yeah. SEDEC. But I think what Lucky shared here is... I think that's what it is. Yeah, some weird names. Some weird name. Code? No, that's not what I want. Oh, said it. Yeah, well, I mean, you guys could find it with enough Googling. Those presentations are probably still there. Oh, here we go. I think it was something here. You guys can go here. Translate to English. Are we going to find it? Maybe not. Although this is already super interesting, just like that. You could just read this, read it. Anyway, very, very, very informative, very interesting pipeline that they have used, because they have essentially created everything in real life, and then they've essentially scanned as much of it as they could, A little bit too much too. I was kind of playing the game, and I was really getting tired at some point of seeing the same kind of objects littered in the environment. There's like one thing that's kind of like a big object that's covered with like this kind of silvery tarp, and I just kept seeing it everywhere. I'm like, oh fuck, not that one again. But there is no denying that was really beautiful work that they have done. Anyway, so simulation stage, yeah. So about 15 days. So high poly, so we get to do, hard surface, like anything that you can't scan is, at that point what you want to be sculpting, right? These sorts of things. So maybe a few examples, perhaps. Well, I mean, these are just shots from my own portfolio, right? But, these are what you do at the high poly stage. You just enjoy doing all of this kind of stuff here. All these great details. It's probably everyone's funnest part of the pipeline there. It's what everyone likes and prefers to do, These are in-game shots. You can see the lower res of Jensen's arm here. Well, come back on that. And when it comes to cloth, then, sure, you start from simulated data, but you still have to retouch it. You sometimes have to ameliorate the folds. You want to add some memory folds over the surface that you can't really easily do within Mars Designer there. We'll do an actual proper in-depth demonstration of all these things once we get to the cloth sculpting class, guys, in a few weeks from now. I think it's in 2 weeks, actually, on the schedule now. Anyway. Also a stage that takes a long time, in big part because we want it to take a long time, like that's usually when we have a lot of fun there. So for a normal character, if such a thing can even exist, I like to say that it's about another 15 days, So you may easily spend 1 month on the just on the high poly alone. Okay. So yeah, let's call this the high res or high poly stage, whichever one you want, really. So we're already at quite a lot of days for like a typical character there. All right, what's after the high poly stage?
Actually, got a quick question about the high poly stage. So during that stage, like in the pipeline that we're kind of writing out right now, is that also when we're like going back and like retopologizing and then bringing it back in and like doing further details on the high poly? Or is this just this?
It's part of it, yes. Like if you need to do a retopology because you need that to capture better detail somewhere, and yes, that's part of the high poly stage.
Okay.
What comes afterwards, guys?
It's time for the low res.
The low res? Are you sure about that? Are you sure?
Sure about that.
Well, you should be sure because that's the proper answer to the question.
Yay.
There you go.
Low poly.
You almost had me a heart attack.
I like to just poke people a little bit like that. But...
That's why Lucky's at the front of the class. And that's why Lucky's sitting at the front.
So we got the low poly stage. Okay. So what do you accomplish at the low poly stage? Like, what do we do?
Retopology, UVs, maybe?
Yeah, pretty much just retopology.
Baking. Good old bake.
Retopology. Let's keep all that for later. We are essentially retopologizing our mesh at this stage. That's truth be told, that's kind of pretty much it. Retopology. Okay. Here's an interesting one. How much time does it take to retopologize a character? How much time do you guys think it takes?
It depends.
It does, but
yeah. Oh god.
Like intuitively, like you guys can't fail this. It's not a fail question or like a pass or fail, but just I want to see what's everyone's conceptions of how long it takes to do a low poly.
3 days approx.
I'd say a full week.
The max of 3 weeks on the most.
3 weeks? Where do you get that as a number?
I think it depends on the complexity of the character.
It's not actually abnormal to spend 3 weeks on a low res. It easily takes 5 days, but if we want to maybe put an average down, because that's kind of where we're going right now, let's say about 10 days, about 2 weeks time to do proper retopology of a character there.
The whole character?
No, just to close.
Oh.
Like, we're not talking here about faces or like hair, because all these things are separate tracks that often get taken care of by someone else, so we're just talking about the outfit of a character there. 10 days, and even then 10 days can be a little short depending on what you're doing, So this is Jensen's arms here, and like the thing about a low res is that I'm sure you can use some tools like ZRemesher as a base to start to really, kind of do a very general pass over the character there in terms of where the edge loops are and stuff like that. But beyond that, low res creation is a very careful process where you really have to really place all your vertices and all your edge loops in very deliberate locations. And so it's a process that takes a long time. There aren't really any manual tools you can use to really speed this up beyond just doing a very simple pass of ZRemesher. But it's important when you're also doing this kind of thing to match the edge loops of different elements of a character that are close together to really match them as well as you can. And so you could do a ZRemesh of something, but then the thing that's right next to it, you probably can't ZRemesh it that well, Like, for example, if you guys take a look here, right? So Jensen's got all these kind of things over his kind of shoulder. It's like synthetic muscles there, And like, you can see how the loops, like there's a loop that continues over these, like, although these are discontinuous, there's like a hole between them. I still had to manually go and really make sure that every edge loop was as continuous in terms of space, if you will, in their position in space over all these different elements there. Like here, I probably even could have done a better job here. You can see that some of these don't quite match there. And so it's a very careful process of like making loops consistent across different elements. Like ultimately these things, they sort of open like this. So all these are different elements that are in different, that are physically separated there, but you still need to match the position of the vertices as much as you can, so that skinning wise, the vertices of neighboring elements that are physically disconnected but have to move together don't start to slide. That's often the problem when your vertices don't actually match in terms of position between two different things that are side by side there. If the vertice position is too dissimilar, then things will start to slide a little bit after skinning there. So it's a very deliberate process of really placing geometry. Here's another example, perhaps. I also have this 3D scene that I'll show you guys in just a second. for Vaclav there. Like this is on Horizon, so this is taken from the same talk that Dan Calvert has given here. So repopulating the this here. So this is what a low res looked like on Horizon 1, essentially. And if you guys take a look at, let's say, the border here, right? So this is, I think this is an Aloy costume. I'm not completely sure, but I think it is. And you guys can see all the geometry here around the border of this very organic kind of piece of clothing that she is wearing there, right? And like, it's not an accident. Like each of the vertices that you guys can see have been kind of deliberately placed in a way to be as low resolution as possible, but yet still capture as best as possible the sort of ragged nature of this piece of cloth that she has on her, right? You can see places here where like there's like zones where like to capture this kind of detail here that is kind of inset within the surface there. As you can see, there's just a few more cuts that have been done just to round out a little bit just the shape of that of the silhouette of that particular inset detail, if you will, you know, that are not elsewhere there. So there's like some very deliberate placement of edge loops and edges to really capture as well as possible the silhouette and the different details that go over the character, but that ultimately, you know, are very optimal. You know, like every vertex that does not have a particular purpose is removed. It's not there. So like every vertex that is left over is there for a reason, either because it helps deformation, because it helps the silhouette. Sometimes we have edge loops and vertices that are there for UV reasons, to support UVs. There's a lot of thought that goes within the placement of vertices on a proper low res there. And so that process takes a long time. We'll talk more about that, of course. We have 2 classes dedicated to this particular topic there, so we'll certainly talk in great detail about it once we get there. But at the very least, you can already observe like that doing a low res, there's a lot to it beyond simply doing a zero mesh of our meshes there. Here's the 3D scene that I had to show you guys, by the way. So this is Vaclav once more. And so this is the low res that I had created. So, you know, it's kind of old at this point here. Like the game came out in, I don't know, 2016, I think, or something. Maybe 2017. I'm not quite sure when Mankind Divided came out there. So like more modern day low reses are more high res than this. But what changes, or what doesn't necessarily change, is that, you know, if you guys take a look, like here's the shirt that he wears, here's a kind of lab coat that he's got over this, right? You guys can see that I have the same edge loops at the same height that are all more or less aligned there. And that too is simply to have better deformation so that both elements can nicely follow each other in terms of skin weights and these sorts of things, you know? So like every edge loop that we have are like always deliberately placed, even on the pants. Now, maybe I could have done a better job there, but if you guys take a look on the inside here, you guys can see that the same edge loops match on the outside of the coat here that they do on the pants, right? Like they're all at the same height. I didn't care so much about this particular, the front of the character, because there's cloth simulation on this within the game. And also this is, you know, relatively far from the pants, so it doesn't need to match that much. But as you can see, as these two pieces of garment get closer to each other within the shape of the character, if that makes any sense, within the character there, you can see that they all converge and they all kind of overlay in terms of position and space there. And that too is so that the vertices of both elements are as close as they possibly can. You guys can also see that there's abundance of triangles here. We don't care about triangles. Quads are completely overrated when it comes to low reses. Because for a scanner, it makes no difference. They care about vertices. They don't care about quads. It makes no difference for the life of a rigger whether you have a quad or a triangle somewhere. Anyway, we'll speak more about that once the time is right. But the idea is that yeah, low-res creation, it's a very careful process. It takes a long time. So even 10 days for certain productions could be considered a relatively low bar in terms of time. It could easily take more than that. But let's keep it as a general number for now. Oh, sorry,
Laura,
switch my screen.
How many times take to complete this character completely in time?
We'll get to it. We'll tell you the number in the end and see where we wind up, and it's probably going to be a higher number than you think it is. But we'll see once we're done with the stages there. What is the total of everything that we have so far, you know? Like, you can see so far we're at, let's say, 5, 10, 30... We're like already at like 40 or 45 days. That's like, in terms of production, that's already 2 months that you've spent on the character there.
Thank you.
All right. What's after the low poly stage? And the retopology stage. I suppose it would be more fitting to call this retopology, I suppose.
Texturing?
Well,
The UVs and texturing.
well, I was about to say we should also plan out the texture sets too. So
Yeah.
that we know, like, yeah.
Let's go for UV creation or UVs. And I think, Compton, you said the right thing. So let's plan the textures, right? We kind of want to do that at this stage here. Which means, you know, if I go back to Vaclav here, like a character is generally split into multiple UV sheets. This is a 3ds Max, by the way. We won't use that together. It's just because it's the character I wanted to show, and that's where the character is. But you have to worry, we're not going to have a 3ds Max class once we get to these stages there. Yeah, we have to plan out like, okay, how many texture sheets do I need for a character? Because we don't typically do full like a character on one UV sheet. We don't typically do that. There's a lot of reasons why we want to avoid that. First of all, it simply makes it harder to split the data off. If at some point you're making a character and you're like, okay, we need a different pair of pants for the character for some reason. Maybe, you know, we're in a different part of the game or a different moment of the game, like we need a different pair of pants. We don't want to have to swap out the full texture of the character because that's not very optimal in terms of how do we manage memory there. So we want to be able to swap out only the pants themselves, and so get rid of only the texture of the pants and replace it with the textures of a new pants as far as memory is concerned. So we always try to break down characters in a very logical way. I much prefer to break down characters based off zones like these than to break off characters based off materials, because it's just more of a modular approach to break characters down based off of zones, you know. So like everything for like the legs here, they all get included into one big texture sheet. I can show you guys what the textures look like. These are what the textures look like. So this is, let's say, the albedo for the torso. This is what it looks like. You can see I'm pretty much using all the UV space here from 0 to 1. There's really not a lot of wasted space, if any, really. It's like a little triangle there. It's like, I could have done something like that. Sure, you know, but ultimately, I think these are packed actually quite nicely there. So what the pants look like.
Oh, I actually had a quick question. What are those squares at the top left on that UV sheet for the upper body?
These here?
Yeah.
It's a good question. Let's check the UVs. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I did this character. We'll check. We'll see what's happening there. These are the pants. You know, so, you know, we break it off based off of logical zones of the character so that we can easily swap these out for something else. So the way that we usually do it is, you know, like a very common way, if you will, is to have pants as a separate UV sheet, have the torso as a separate UV sheet. Now, this usually includes the arms, but in this case here, because this character has mechanical arms and stuff, they all have their own UV sheets. So both arms have been separated as different textures. Ultimately, they could have been combined into one texture set. I don't quite remember the logic behind splitting the two arms as separate texture sheets. Could it have something to do with resolution of the textures, perhaps? This is the texture. This is the albedo for one of his two arms. So we split the torso. Head is a separate texture sheet. And finally, the hair is a separate texture sheet. So what are those little things? That's a good question. Let's check out the UVs for the torso, see what it looks like. Oh, those were cables. Now, like, I think I had a little bit of space that was kind of left over. Like, he's got all these kind of cables here, and I really wasn't going to go and start to texture these, like, individually there with, like, dirt and stuff. Like, nowadays, I suspect we would do that, but back in the day, that precision wasn't necessary within the textures. Let me see if I can bring up some of these shots here.
For UV packing, do you just go manual or you use some kind of prefer softwares?
Back in the day, this was all manual. Now we have tools to help us out, just kind of go a bit faster there. Yeah, so those cables are the things that he's got here on the chest. And I was like, fuck it, I'm not gonna like texture like these individually. So I just made like little slots of different colors and different like glossiness values and what have you there. And I just put them there. It's a bit lazy, but it works. Yeah, so that's what those are. So the question is like, how do we make that? Well, we have much better automatic unwrapping tools now than what we had back then. So like nowadays I would use a combination of, I would start with an automatic tool, like let's say Unfold 3D within Maya there, or externally if you don't have Maya, that would be Rhizome is the equivalent. Really, really powerful, great packer. You could probably, if you're really in a bind of time, you could probably do pretty solid unwrapping using automatic techniques. Now, I mean, what can never be done automatically is selecting the separation between your different UV shells. You kind of always have to manually do that. But in terms of flattening things out and just sort of packing them within a space there, if you're really, really pressed for time, we have automatic solutions right now, like Unfold 3D that works pretty well, But to answer the question back then, it was all manual. It's something I've always taken I have always taken a lot of pride in, and I've always really liked to do UVs because it's so relaxing. It's like doing retopology. It's like, you do these steps after you're done with the high poly stage and the blockout stage, and things were very challenging. There's been a lot of feedback. A lot of people had opinions. Like those high poly stages and the stages that come before, they're very, very, they're mentally draining. So it's great to come to like the retopology stage and the UV stage and be like, yeah, I'm just going to play Tetris for like a bit of time and really just pack all these things in manually as well as I can, So this is all manual placement. So I got really, really good at it. I mean, we'll talk about that once the time is right there. But yeah, for the most part, that was all manually placed. I suspect I would still probably manually pack stuff if a character isn't too complex, because again, I just kind of like it. Yeah, it's something that I just enjoy, But yeah, so we'll talk more about that once the time's right. So that's a UV. So let's say about 5 days or so. It's already 3 o'clock. After that, let's bake the character out. Right, so if we put down what's important here, this would be essentially silhouette like that, right? Or let's silhouette like that, right? Yeah, silhouette. It's like a French word. I should know this better. Silhouette, UV seams, so on and so forth. There's a lot that goes in there. UVs, plan the textures, and of course, optimize space. Optimize memory footprint, let's say, perhaps. Baking. I'm not too sure what to put down here. Just, I don't know, bake it good, I guess.
Maybe checking like a texture resolution as well and seeing like what's going to work best for the character.
Yeah, doing test bakes, yeah.
Yep.
Like testing if the UVs are good, if UVs and low res is satisfying. Yeah, like it often happens.
Distortions as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure you would see that in
And
the
UVs,
baking.
no? And
You would
UVs.
see that. Yeah, I mean, that's why I put stretching down here. That's mostly what that is. So if UVs and low res, are proper, because often it's at the baking stage that you realize that you have problems with your low res. Like when you're making a low res, like this here, like one of the things that we do on a low res is that we often want to support the major folds that are on a character, right? Like, okay, there's a big fold on the back here, so I need to kind of make the geometry like this. I could have done a better job at this, by the way. Could have done a better job there, but still, like does our low res properly support the important folds over a character or not? It's hard to know that until you've baked out the normal map and you can kind of see the actual proper result there. Or do I need to add geometry somewhere? Like, are my folds looking good? Are they looking like kind of ugly there? There's like plenty of places here I could have done a better job, but this was done many years ago. So back in the day, that was pretty good. Like nowadays, I would give a bit more thought to the placement of some of these edge loop and stuff. But yeah, like it's at the baking stage that we usually get the first like really useful feedback as to whether we've done we've placed our edge loops at the proper location or not. So there is often here. This will often go back here. If bad,
Also,
if there are
the naming.
issues.
The naming for baking. Name all your high polys and low polys if you are using FBX,
Yeah.
Maybe create explode model or good baking is a great option.
Doing what? Sorry. So you said baking a. Can you say that again? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
He said explode models, but if you use the namings, you don't need to explode the models.
Yeah, all of that stuff is.
Yeah, we used to do that before, but nowadays with the namings, you can keep them in the same position.
So all of that stuff happens here, right? So let's add another 5 days for baking. Which when you're looking at a character. Oh, sorry, I'm still recording the wrong screen. Haha, I wanted to show this to you guys. I was taking this down here, just putting baking. I've added a little arrow here that points that goes back to retopology. When that happens, when there are issues, because we often only discover that at the baking stage, and you need to shoot it back at the retopology and kind of go back through that loop there that often happens there. So yeah, so this is about 5 days or so, perhaps, of baking, which is about. It's about 1 day per logical zone of the character, if you kind of think about it. So 1 day of baking, renaming stuff, perhaps retouching the baked textures a little bit, if it comes to that. All right, what's after baking, guys?
Now it's time for getting reference and texturing.
It's time to eat your delicious bread that you have baked. So good. Homemade bread is so delicious, guys. The texturing, right? That's what comes now. Okay, sorry.
No, it's all good. I do like what you said about getting more references, though, because I feel like whenever I do a character, like I get a ton of references in the beginning, but I feel like I'm still like grabbing some stuff later on. Just get prepped. So
Yeah. You know, like you really need really close-up images of materials, different variations. Like one thing that you have to pay attention to is how do different materials look like in different states of wear and tear, you know, because often your character will probably not be pristine, or will have different wear and tear levels over the different characters in different places there. So you obviously need research as to and references as to what it is that you're trying to do there. We'll talk more about that next week. There's a surprisingly high amount of stuff to talk about as far as that's concerned. That's why I've prepared a class for that next week. So stay tuned for that. Here's what we want to make our surfaces come to life. Capture proper wear and tear, perhaps. So back in the day, when I was working on my kind of, this was all Photoshop. All of that was done in Photoshop. Thank God we don't still texture within Photoshop. This was all Photoshop, guys. I don't want to have to do Photoshop texturing ever again. But that's how it was back then.
Oh.
And yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So, you know, Substance Painter, Marmoset, whatever it is you want to texture, like there's so many options now. Quixel, these sorts of things. It's a lot funner to texture now than it was back then. How long would you guys say that it takes to do the textures for a character? Based off of everything we've been pitching in terms of numbers so far?
Depends, something like at least a week in the max.
I'd say 1 to 2 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks is pretty solid.
Nice.
You don't worry about the details there. Really take your time to craft some great details there. Yeah.
What would the proportion be for the, let's say, the face and all the other stuff? Since I think the face is very important on the texturing phase. How much of those then they would be face, and how much would be everything else? Yes.
Well, in this case, we're just talking about outfit here. So face, you know, you could probably consider a few days to texture a face, maybe like 2 to 4 days, depending on how important a main character or how important of a character is, you know. But in this case here, this is just about outfits here, you know. So that's 10 days just on the clothes themselves, you know. Yeah,
okay.
So you can add maybe about like 3 to 5 days if you want to texture a face on top of that, you know, depending on the degree of complexity and how important a character is. You know, like if you guys follow the workflow that I've posted on Algango Studio, essentially two classes ago, you can actually go through a face in 1 day without too much of a hassle there, you know. But then, you know, you also have to account on top of that. You'll probably have feedback. You'll probably have a few iterations to do on top of that. So you have to also account for the time that takes. So yeah, I'd say maybe like, I don't know, 2 to 5 days, depending on how important a character is.
I see. Sounds fun. Thank you.
Oh, it is a lot of fun. All right, we're getting near the end, but we're not done yet. Actually, from now on, it starts to get a little wonky, guys. Oh, I'll save that afterward. I'll give this to you guys as a handout, by the way, so that you guys can look at it. Look at my great handwriting after the fact. Okay, we're done with the textures. The next one, and in the interest of time, let's try going a bit faster because we're pretty much at the time that the class should be taking here. After this, we have integration. Or maybe first integration, because there's more to integration. But let's just say integration, because that's usually what comes afterward, right? Like integration and shaders and engine shaders. So applying engine shaders, integrating all your data in there, getting all your data in there, starting to look at the results that you have, probably adjusting the textures based off how it looks within the engine, these sorts of things. we'll talk in great detail once the time is right for this. So let's say about 2 days for this. So this is engine shaders. Now, mind you, as we have talked about, you're probably not creating the shaders yourself. You're probably just reusing shaders that have been made by a shader artist. So you're probably just reusing shaders that someone else has made that can be applied on this particular character there. So there's a lot of color tweaking, especially, or I guess texture tweaks. Okay, so not too complicated, but after you, like, now it gets really fun. Now the pipeline stops looking like a pipeline. Starts looking like something else entirely. Once we have finally integrated our character within the engine there, which at this point hasn't been rigged, by the way, but it has been integrated. So you have your character in T-pose. I don't think I have any shots here, right? But essentially, you're within your game engine like this, but your character is still within a T-pose at that particular moment there. So after you have integrated your character within the engine and you've set up all your materials, you've done all of that stuff. Now this gets fun. Now this starts looking like this. And so this goes to rigging. At this point, you may have to do LODs for your character. And usually these are done either in parallel with rigging. Maybe they're done before, sometimes they're done after, depending on the technology that you're using. But essentially you have to do LODs or levels of detail. Which, if this is the first time that you hear this, a LOD is essentially just a simplified representation of your character mesh that can be used at different distances within the game. So, we were talking about Peach Fuzz at the top of the class there and on Aloy's face in Horizon 2. That gets LODed out. That's usually how we refer to it after a certain distance, so that the Peach Fuzz, you're not spending the 100,000 triangles or however much triangles there are in there. When the camera is so far from the character that you would have no benefits of that. So that data has to be generated. It's often generated by character artists, but sometimes it's other teams. In our case here, let's just say that it takes about 5 days to generate LODs. Although rigging, that's another department, so let's not worry about time. LODs, then we have technical art. Things like really complex shaders, just complex shaders. Like, the character's going to need a snow shader because he's going through the snow. So we need a shader where he can build up snow with time. When you're outside for long enough over the character, you can start seeing snow build up on the shoulders, these sorts of things. Those are very complex shaders that is usually done by the technical art team. Or perhaps the shader artist that you have that may or may not be a character artist, but it also has to happen there. Am I missing anything? Actually, that may be it. No, I think that's it, unless you guys think of something that I missed.
Does technical art encompass, like, I don't know, eyes and, like, hair stuff, or is it just, like, more complex shader work engine?
What do you mean by eyes exactly?
Or sorry, I don't know. When I think of like complex shader work, I just think of like we kind of talked about the Unreal Eye shader and how it's like a whole mess of stuff that's used to like make it look realistic. And I was wondering if that was part of like the technical art stage at this point in the character pipeline.
Yeah. So this goes to animation afterward. And leveled design to place the characters within the game. This goes to rigging. Once it's done, the lots go to rigging to be rigged. And technical art. Well, it's just technical art, I guess. It stays there.
Here's another question. During this pipeline, at least you personally, like, do like a rudimentary rig or like an auto rig at some point, just like pose your character just to like see, just like kind of get that silhouette from like the concept art?
You typically do that at the blockout stage.
That's fair.
It's usually the blockout stage. Like posing a high res it's complicated because you have so many little like pieces left and right that it's really, really complicated to do, you know?
That's fair.
But you could, you know. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Texturing. Yeah, so that's the whole pipeline, guys. Okay. Woo! It's more than just one person modeling something out, right? Yeah, that's a long one. Okay, so how much time's the question? Let's do, okay, so starting for like 3D character art this time. 3D character.
And this is assuming you're working like eight hours a day. Like
that's right. Yeah.
Character. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. So we have 2 days, 5 days. That's 7 days. I'll keep the 2 days for later because it's going to screw me up. Okay, so let's start. Let's do the easy ones first. So 5, let's say the blockout stage, we said about 5 days. So that's 10 days, 25 days, 40 days, 50 days, 60 days, 70 days, 74 days, I believe is the total here. Oh yeah, plus 5 days for the lots. It's about 80 man days. Or person days, if you want to be inclusive. Which, considering the fact that we work about 20 days in a month, means that it takes about 4 months for a artist to work on a character. So you produce probably about, yeah, you can probably, like, it's normal to produce 3 to 4, maybe 6, depending. Like, if your characters are very, very simple, obviously all these times are going to go down significantly there. Like, obviously that goes without saying there, but we're talking about AAA characters where there's a really big emphasis on quality and these sorts of things. So it's not abnormal for someone who does character art to maybe produce 4 to 6 characters within a year or so. More than 6 is you're working really hard. So this whole process is probably longer than you thought it was. Like 80 days, really? Like, yeah. But then again, that's on a production, right? If you're working at home and you're working 16 hours a day, you can easily cut that by half. Because you're a student, and students have nothing else to do because you don't have any cash. Yeah.
Using
don't
10
work
10 hours for day, Laura?
How much?
10 hours.
What about
for day?
Do I like that?
No, it's a question. And 80 Mondays, but every day you need to work 10 hours?
Well, a Monday is typically 8 hours. One MD is typically 8 hours. Now, that's 8 hours on a character art production, which means that because of the open office concept and what have you, it's probably closer to 6 hours of actual work. Of actual productive work. It's probably closer to 6 than to 8.
Thank you.
Because not everyone works all the time. You got coffee breaks, you got cigarette breaks. You talk to people for your of the weekend you've had. You watch YouTube videos. You spend some time with Facebook. All these things are very common. It's all just another day in a video game studio, really. Spend time with these sorts of things. Yeah.
When you start in a project, you can break this process in time to spend with your family, play your pet, or is the start and the end, and then you can after you go with your family.
Well, like this is all based off of 8 hours a day, right? Right. So
Yes.
you have time for your pet in there. Like you work 8 hours and you go home, and so you have a balanced life. It's kind of how I consider it there. Like you can cut this down to like 40 days easily, but then you're kind of killing yourself at that point. Which is just another day in a video game studio of certain productions. Yeah, you know, like ideally 80 man days is the time that it takes when you have a balanced life on the side there, which for the most part, which I have to say is most of the productions, if not almost all the productions I've worked on. Always was very lucky to one where project time was managed well enough that overtime was a very, very small minimum, but also like me when I was lead, it was very important for me too that people manage their time, that we manage time properly so that people get to go home at 6 o'clock, you know?
Great. Thank you.
All right, guys, let's have our Q&A. That's it for the class today. That's the whole pipeline. So next week, references, and then afterward, let's talk about cloth sculpting, and then let's delve into low-res creation and start to really break that down step by step there, the steps that would follow that afterward. Let me go ahead, bring up Discord. Let's look what kind of Q&A questions you guys have left for me. What do we have? Starting at 152. Today, May 30th. Yeah, where am I 30th today? Kind's Peace, 1:52 p.m. Sadly, I've got to go now in the break, but I'm loving the lecture so far, Laura. Really useful. Awesome. That's great to hear. You have a question. It is a bit related to what we saw about baking and sculpting and such in ZBrush with different layers. So you plan to make some blend shapes of a character through layers in ZBrush. You'll have different layers and each will have a blend shape. So you'd like to do two things. One, you would like to take the low poly model to Maya as a blend shape so that it works with the blend shapes there. Yeah, okay. Two, bake the high poly as displacement or normal of each blend shape so that you can blend them depending on how the blend shape slider is in Maya or Unreal later. Yeah, cool. How would you go on about doing this? You are unsure if there is a way to automatically export blend shapes to Maya in ZBrush. I believe there is. Specifically because your character would also have a rig. So the rigging part, I can't quite talk about that, but you know, the idea of blend shapes is that your mesh doesn't change in terms of vertex count, right? So even if you have skinning on top of something, you can still, you know, if you have like a blend shape, you can still blend to it, even if there's skinning on top of it. Now, the idea of blend shapes and skinning, these are usually two technologies that are kind of competing with each other. When it comes to like facial animation and stuff, you know, there is on one side pipelines that are fully skinning based for like moving bones for the face and stuff, and there are pipelines that are fully blend shape based. Now, most productions have kind of a combination of two there. It's common for productions to start with blend shapes and then convert those to bone positions and just have an army of bones over the face, these sorts of things. There's a lot of different ways that can be approached there. So how do you go about doing this? That's a very, very good question, you know? Like, I would tell you, you know, what could be common, okay, is that you sync up, you have corrective blend shapes where you let the bone animation give you the position of different facial expressions, and then you simply take the result of the bone animation and then you simply do a correction. You use a blend shape on top of that to simply get nicer, more subtleties within the position of the vertices that you cannot get with skinning there. And so your blend shapes in that case would essentially go over your skinning. It's like first you deform the character with the skinning, and then you have a blend shape that is simply the difference between what the mesh currently looks like and the corrected blend shape there. So your blend shape is essentially just the difference between the mesh after skinning and whatever it is that you have sculpted in ZBrush as a blend shape there. And then you would throw that corrective blend shape into whichever slider you have somewhere that controls the intensity of the facial expression. So that as you blend to the facial expression using bone-based, you also at the same time gradually increase the opacity of your corrective blend shape layer there. It's a topic that merits its own class at some point. It's not a high priority for us right now, but it makes sense at some point to record a full class on that, although I suspect it's going to take a few months at least until that gets on the schedule there. But it's an interesting topic there. Now, to answer the question, perhaps the other questions that you have as far as ZBrush is concerned. Here's what I know about ZBrush and blend shapes there. Do I have ZBrush open right now? I don't even have ZBrush open. Oh yeah, I do have ZBrush open. Of course I have ZBrush open. I do character art. It's like, even if I close my character, even if I close my computer, ZBrush still stays open somewhere because it's always open in my mind. It's like it never closes. Yeah, actually, okay, yeah, here's a face that I've used. I'm not super proud of it, guys. I'm not super proud of this face, but it does have a few expressions we could talk about. And so within your layers, you can actually export all your different layers as blend shapes. There is a way to do that. I don't know where to do it just in one click. Maybe someone knows better than me, but there is a way to say export all the layers as blend shapes. There's something like that in here somewhere. There is something like that in here somewhere. Let's see here. To the plugins, probably, I guess. Maya blend shapes. Here we go. Create a new sculpting layer. Create a new layer for you. Export blend shapes here. Export 3D layers as Maya blend shapes. So there you go. You can use this. And as it says here, it's essentially going to export the lowest subdivision level, and I assume it's going to set this up automatically for you in Maya, although I'm not quite sure about that. But I assume that's what it does. I mean, could try it. So I have this here, little pucker, little smile. As I said, not really proud of these, but they work. Oh, this was a test I did for something. Let me get rid of it. Eyes closed. Yeah, let's just click on it. Let's see what happens. Kind of curious. So, so you can easily do that. You can export all your layers as different blend shapes easily there. Now, as to how would you go about making a displacement map for each of these? Your displacement map would have to be generated. You would have one displacement map per layer. So each layer would have to generate its own displacement map separately. And the displacement map essentially represents the difference between your low-res blend shape and whatever high-res it is that you have. So you can use that afterward. It's a tricky. I mean, it's very technically involved. You know, like as doing blend shapes like these. So it's an interesting topic. Like I'd be interested in recording a class on this at some point. Let me see what's happening here in Maya. Let's take a look. What did we wind up with? We got our blend shape tool that's open. We got our face here. Oh yeah, that works great. That's pretty nice, actually. Pretty cool, pretty solid. Pretty solid tool. Now, as it comes to rigging, now that part gets complicated. You know, like a common workflow is you create a bunch of blend shapes, and then afterward you convert that to bone position, you know, so that you only have bones in the end, because bones are a bit faster and they don't take as much memory to like animate and stuff. That's a common way that people like create first blend shapes, but then afterward convert that to bone positions. But you need, you know, you need specialized scripts for that and stuff. Anyway, I hope that this helps. as an explanation. Thanks for the question. That's a really, really good one. Really good topic. Kawaii. Laura, I have a question regarding the time you give the character to the animator rigger. The mesh has to be perfect in terms of topology, or what we give to the rigger can just be a pre-mesh for form and proportion, like a blockout or even decimated mesh or zero mesh. In a little indie, is it possible to the rigger animator to start something with that kind of mesh, like as in a dirty quick mesh? Maybe start a skeleton from proportion and then receive an updated mesh afterward. There is prerequisites for giving our mesh to the animator. Thanks. Yeah, so the idea is that usually the riggers get involved right at the blockout stage, you know? So when we're defining that blockout stage and saying that we are sort of integrating the mesh there at the blockout stage, then this particular stage gets transferred over to the riggers. And this is the moment when they start to go to town here. You know, like they'll make very quick and dirty skinning themselves. They will integrate this. This isn't the best shot from that particular talk that Dan gave, but you guys do remember the shot there where we had the characters that were sort of moving around and stuff, right? So that's the moment where riggers get involved, and they have data that is good enough that they can start to plan, okay, we'll need some cloth simulation here, we'll need some bones here to get this kind of effect, you know? So the blockout stage is as much for the riggers and the animators as it is for the people who do character art, because it gives them data to look at, to sort of start to like analyze. What a rigger will typically do is that they will take the very basic skinning that they have done for a character, or sometimes they will even break it down into little pieces that are hard surface skinned to different bones, you know? I don't have any examples here, unfortunately, but you will see that a lot in like production. It's like the riggers would quite literally take a mesh that you give them. They won't even do soft skinning. They'll just literally just split it into little hard surface pieces that they'll attach to the different bones, you know? So they'll take like a leg and they'll break just the upper leg as separate geometry. They'll break the lower leg as separate geometry, and they'll skin both to their respective bones there. And so it creates almost like a dummy character, you know, like sort of mannequin that you see within stores there, where everything is kind of rigid, but you can still pose it. And they ship that off to like animators so that the animators themselves can start to get involved, you know. We haven't really talked about the animators' role, but they do have a role to play, and also kind of being involved in the blockout, bringing ideas, perhaps like, hey, we could add a little strap here, we could change this little detail there, maybe to create a bit of secondary motion over the character in different places there. So the animators are typically, or at least really deserve to be involved at the blockout stage, so that they can really also start to contribute to the discussion as to how it is that we make these characters as well as they possibly can there. So yeah, that's a great question, and that's where that happens. But after that, they're typically not involved until the final character has been delivered. Elita, you have a question. Is there a certain reason why we are creating the clothes right after the blockout? Is it so we can only concentrate on creating secondary and tertiary details only on the parts of the character showing, and do less detail work there, and do less detail work where clothes would cover the body there? I suppose the question is, as opposed to create... If you're not creating clothes right after the blockout, what are you doing instead? What are the other choices there? I guess go straight to ZBrush and do the high poly. You mean like, why don't we start with high poly first and then do the clothes afterward? I guess that's the order in which you're asking it.
Basically, yeah. Because I was thinking that, well, we could create the whole character naked with all the details and then add the clothes on top of it.
Yeah. So when you're talking about details, you're talking about details on the base body there.
Yes.
Okay. The way that base bodies are usually handled on productions is that you have a separate person whose job it is to take care of it. And they will often have finish detailing a base body before the clothes even start for a particular character there. So that's very common. And the idea is that often when you're working on a production, you'll start with a set of base bodies that have been pre-made, that have different proportions or different looks, these sorts of things. And then depending on the parts of the base body that will be visible once you have clothed the character there, then what you do as someone who does the more general character art for the character, that you'll simply start to steal the low-res geometry for the part of the base body that you'll see in the end, you know. So the idea is that usually you have someone whose job it is to fully detail the base bodies, so that afterward those detailed base bodies can be handed off to the people who do the outfit of particular characters. And then they simply steal data, you know, like they steal the data of the base body that they need, depending on what's going to be visible in the end there. So it doesn't really matter in which order you do it. Now, if the only thing that you're doing is literally only one character, you're doing portfolio piece, you don't care about this kind of production approach to things, it makes a ton of sense to do the details on the base body after you've done the clothes, as you have mentioned, for the reasons that you have simply said there. You simply want to save time and you don't want to detail things that aren't going to be there.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the question. Samar, just curious, do you think in the near future, because of photogrammetry, sculpting work will become obsolete? I do not think that. I don't think that, because there are things that reality simply cannot capture, you know? It's like the moment that you, the moment that you're within fantasy realm, you're already within a realm where it's kind of impossible to create things. Like, sure, you could create things with like prosthetics and stuff, and I assume that that's something that perhaps a lot of other people will do. But the problem with prosthetics is that it's very involved as a process, you know? You have to have someone to do makeup. You have to have someone who's a prosthetic specialist. You have to have a photogrammetry rig. Like, it's very involved as a process. So it makes sense to do that in certain cases. But you, like, often the question is also simply what is the most efficient approach, you know? So in certain cases, it is efficient to maybe have someone do something in real life and then scan it. But in other cases, it's more efficient to just do it in 3D directly. The more complex something is, or the less fully realistic something is, the more it's tempting to do it in 3D, because you'll probably have an easier time there, you know? It's like, if you have a clothes, like you want a character to wear a particular garment, and that garment simply does not exist in real life, there's nothing you can scan to get it, right? You'll always need people who are able to put clothes together like that in 3D. Now, you could say, well, you could tailor the clothes in like real life, and then you could scan it. And the answer is yes, you could, but I think that is a much longer and much more costly process than have someone do Mars design to create it, right? So in terms of efficiency, that's always, you know, the kind of drawback that you do on a production there. And so the further from real life that you get, the more compelling it is to do things in 3D directly. So no, I don't think that photogrammetry will ever fully replace sculpting, you know? Even for stuff like faces, you know? It's like, yeah, you can photogrammetrize a naturalistic face off of someone, but if you want, the moment that you want to sculpt something that is in any way stylized, suddenly there's nothing you can really scan for that, right? You also need artists to take that data that has been scanned and that can know how to retouch it to make it better, because there are maybe details that maybe you want to get rid of, you know, like we've talked on Outgang a little bit in the past on the concept of idealization. There's a YouTube video that you guys can watch on our YouTube page that's called the Character Stylization Spectrum. That is kind of interesting because there are artistic choices that we make when we have a face that has been scanned. You know, we're like, okay, this particular wrinkle, do I want to keep it or not? Do I want to make the face a little bit more symmetrical to make the character more appealing? These are all questions that we have once we receive the scanned data and we turn that into the character that we need or that we want to make, right? So there are still manual labor involved in retouching the work there. So no, I don't think that photogrammetry will replace character artists. The one that I would be more scared of is AI, in fact. Because like right now we have AI that's really in its infancy, but ultimately at some point you probably will be able to have AI to just automatically generate characters in some way, shape, or form, right? or like generate faces. And then maybe at some point you just talk to the computer and you're like, make the brows higher, make the eyes bigger, and then it kind of does it for you, you know? I imagine at some point that is something that will be more, have a bigger impact on our job, you know, than actual photogrammetry there.
Yeah, that's also creep me up. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. Nicola, sorry if you talked about it. Couldn't be there earlier. You were wondering where would I have placed the proxy mesh that you gave to animators in the pipeline. So as we talked about, essentially after the blockout and integration stage of the blockout, it's pretty much where your proxy mesh is that you give to animators. Lucky Def. Your question is about revisions. Is there any instance where you made a whole character and it came back and you had to do it all over again? Main characters, that's very common. Like principal, like the main character of like a game. How much time it adds to the whole table we discussed? Does the character continue to come back until the end of production? I mean, something has to be not seriously wrong in a production, but something has to go seriously wrong on a production to have to take those many steps back, right? But yes, it does happen. I remember on Deus Ex, the first one we did in Montreal, Human Revolution, after about 2 years, we just opened a giant garbage bin and we just threw in there all the character art we did and we started from scratch again. Because the art direction had changed so much that we're like, these characters don't fit anymore. We need to redo them. So we redid everything. On Human Revolution, we did many different versions of Adam Jensen because we were figuring out what the character was, you know. The process was a lot smoother on Mankind Divided because we knew who the character was. So it was pretty much just doing Jensen version 2 there. But on Human Revolution, like we were, you know, creating Jensen from scratch there. Like the concept, you know, there was no concept before that, right? So there was a lot to figure out there. And yeah, sometimes you just know it later in production. It's like, you know what, this character had worked a year and a half ago, now it doesn't work anymore. We need to restart it. It's common. It happens. Kind of learn at some point to just accept it, you know, and just accept that it's part of the job. So yes, that happens. But ideally, you know, the blockout stage is the stage that is probably the most critical in making sure that the least amount of these things happen, you know, because that's the idea of the blockout stage. You work a week or two on a character and then you can already throw it within the game and be like, hey, does this work or not? Is this character actually what we need it to be, you know? Because before Mankind Divided and even during Mankind Divided, in fact, we didn't even do blockouts here in Montreal at Eidos Montreal. The concept of blockouts wasn't something that we had implemented yet in productions. And I made sure that we implemented that at the end of the production, and with what started after that, that I still cannot talk about. But for a while, yeah, we were producing characters without doing blockouts, and that led to more instances of, oh well, we've been working on this for 4 months. We finally have integration within the engine. It doesn't look good. Let's go back and redo it, you know? So the blockout there is there to reduce the number of times that happens, but that still happens because sometimes you just can't know whether your character will work or not until you're much further along in production there.
Okay, thanks, Lara.
Yeah. Thief in Montreal, it's no secret that that game had a very troubled production. And I know that the main character, Garrett, got redone, like, I don't know, I'll pitch a number at least like 4 times, 5 times, maybe.
Wow, that's... wow.
Yeah, no, like, these things happen. Fred, is there a reason why your Deus Ex character was posed in the 3ds Max scene? Is it a separate post scene apart from the original T-post scene? Well, we were working 3ds Max back then. So I posed him just for a rendering shot at some point, but it wasn't anything beyond that there. And it was already skinned in 3ds Max. So I'm like, well, I'll just keep that, you know, like I'll just keep the rig really. Because back then we were skinning everything in 3ds Max using the biped and stuff, you know. So that's why this whole thing is posed, because this is still using essentially the original skinning of the character. I believe. I don't think I redid that. I think this is still the original skinning. I'm not completely sure, but still. But yeah, I mean, that's the reason. Because it was already there to begin with. Sensei, is it possible to transfer a stack of layers from one subtool to another? Ooh, that's an interesting one. Version 1, version 2 are the same model, but the first one was created with Dynamesh and does not have UVs. The second one now retopology and has UVs. You can only transfer layers if you have the same topology. If your topology changed, you can't easily transfer vertex data between two meshes. And therefore, the only other option that you have at your disposal is projection. So you would have to be like, okay, so this is, let's say this is my mesh like this. Maybe I have a blend shape. I have, let's say, the that work? Yeah, okay. So, let's say you have a blend shape here. What you would have to do is, I think ZWrap is your best hope in this case. I think your best hope is to use ZWrap in this case. So the class we gave on working with subdivisions in ZBrush has a few interesting tidbits, notably in the Q&A. I know we've talked a little bit about that. How can you take like, here's the idea. Here's what the idea is. Okay, so I start with two versions of the same head, but let's say this one here has been Dynamesh, right? I think I have a scale issue in my scene. That shouldn't be as low res as that. Okay, so let's say I have one head that's Dynamesh, right? I mean, already if it's Dynamesh, I probably wouldn't have layers on it to begin with because you're just asking for trouble, really. The moment that you recalculate the Dynamesh, your layers won't work if it even allows you to do so. But, technically, yes, you could turn off Dynamesh and then create layers and start working on this, of course. You could do that. So I don't know, let's say her eyes are closed. It's really, really bad, right? But let's just use this as an example because that's what you're sort of asking there, I think. Okay, so I have a layer here. Say that closes the eyes that I've done using Dynamesh, right? And then I have this topology that's here. Let me delete my higher subdivision levels. Let me bake my layers. This is just a lone mesh that I have, right? So what you would do is that you essentially need to do a ZRemesh at every for like every blend shape that you have. So first of all, you would do a sorry, did I say ZRemesh? A ZWrap, sorry. So you need to do a ZWrap first from your whatever low res topology that you have, Like let's say that, I don't know, this is a different one. This is kind of like that, right? So you're like, okay, first of all, you need to ZWrap this low res topology on your Dynameshed head. Let's turn off the layers that we have here. This is what you're asking, right? I want to make sure that I'm answering the question properly. First one was created with Dynamesh and does not have UVs. Second one, topology and has UVs. Okay. Yeah, so you're asking for layers on a subtool that has Dynamesh. That's already kind of something that I would be... I mean, if you know what you're doing, then all the more power to you. But in general, it wouldn't be my recommendation to do that. Anyway, okay, so we have our low res here, our Dynamesh mesh. Here's our low res, So first we do a ZWrap of this. Now I always confuse which one should come first. But let's see if I got it right the first time. Can I? Oh no, I need to update this. Really? Oh no, that sucks. Well, okay. Let's just break it down. First, you do a zwrap, and you can watch the subdivision class to see the whole process there. So first, you do a zwrap of this, so that it looks like this, right? So you zwrap it on your Dynamesh mesh. And then you take your Dynamesh mesh, you turn on the layer for which you want to generate a blend shape on your clean topology. You take your clean topology, you also create a layer in this case, and then you just do the process again. You do a zwrap so that the eyes, like you do a zwrap of this to your Dynamesh a second time, so that this mesh will inherit, the eyes being closed and stuff like that. And then you just go through all the layers that you have. So every time on your low res topology, you create a new layer and you do a zwrap and so on and so forth. You probably also have, while you're there, probably also want to subdivide this and do a projection to reacquire the more high res data, of course, that you may have sculpted within your mesh there. That's the process. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if that makes sense or not.
Oh yeah, of course. To follow your last class and continue the process, I reuse a old model. So in some point, this old model have some layers that I can to continue in the mesh, but I don't know how to transfer. For this is my question, but this process is very logical, excellent, and thank you very much, Laura.
All right, cool. It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, Sensei. I think that's it, guys. I think that's the end of it. I believe that's the end of it. So lots of talking today. That was a fully theoretical class. If you're new to the character art pipeline, I hope that this clears up or answers a lot of questions that you may have as to what it is that someone does on a video game production. What does the standard character art pipeline looks like? How much time does it take to create a character? These sorts of things. So that's the whole goal. And so yeah, the whole topic of the character art pipeline is pretty much a topic that we'll explore for the next 8 weeks or 9 weeks. What we'll do essentially from now on is essentially go through every step of that process in great detail and talk about how to properly do the job, how to use the tools to create a good result at every point there. So it's a long process. Of course, we'll skip over the high poly stage because we've already talked a lot about that, and we will talk a lot more in detail about that in the future. We can't really cover high poly that well within one class there because there's such a high variability to the kind of work we could be doing there. But we have covered Marvelous Designer stage quite well in Ageng Studio. So for the most part, we'll essentially start from the low res and just go forward from there. But we will have 2 classes before that. One that is related to reference gathering. So that's coming up next week. It's going to be more interesting than you may think that it is if you're particularly interested in that topic of understanding materials, how you can understand materials, what to look for within materials when you're gathering references, these sorts of things. After that, then, so 2 weeks time from now, we'll have a class dedicated to sculpting and improving folds within ZBrush. So we'll have all that information nicely contained within one class there. And after that, it's pretty much all low-res creation and so on and so forth for the next few weeks until we get to summer break, guys. All right, that's it. I'm gonna log off here, and I'm gonna wish you all have a great week, and we'll speak more next weekend, guys.